Good morning, Ms. Mano. My witness today, my first witness today, is Michael Lee, who is a Papakilahoku, or known as a Hawaiian star priest, who has extensive knowledge of Hawaiian history, Hawaiian genealogy, and Hawaiian spiritual ceremonial.
And the offer of proof, please.
Offer of proof. I don't know how to. Can you clarify for that? What kind of?
What are you offering him to prove?
Oh, he's going to tell.
Needs to be relevant to the.
Yes, he's going to speak about the many different types of ceremonies that are conducted on Mauna Kea that has not necessarily been identified. He'll talk to you about the sanctity, especially of the northwestern plateau. He will talk to you about how his understanding of the stars fit all to each and every one of the pu'us and other features on this island that are necessary for life.
Okay, could you please have Mr.
Yes,
Lee
ma'am.
take the stand?
Thank you.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Judge.
Yeah, you may move the microphone closer to you so it's easier to speak directly into.
Mahalo.
Right. May I ask you to please state your name?
My name is Michael Kumukauoha Lee.
Thank you. And may I ask you to take the oath, please?
Yes.
Would you raise your right hand? Thank you. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in the matters before this tribunal shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do, so help me God.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Lee, do you happen to have in front of you your written testimony? I think it's in the form of an email to Mr. Fergerstrom.
This is the testimony that I put in for Mr. Fergerstrom.
Okay.
And it was filed, I believe, in October.
Okay, great. And could you, just so that I'm sure that we have the same thing, can you tell me how many pages you have there?
4 pages, Judge.
Is it on 2 sides by any chance?
The copy I have is on one side, but it might have been, I'm not sure, but I have 4 pages.
Okay, because I think I have a copy that was filed, and it does appear to be something like 13 pages.
Well, I think maybe the font size is the reason why it went so long, because I used a very small font size in my original putting in, but I think it was typed out in a smaller font size.
Perfect. May I ask you, on the last page, it does appear to have your typewritten name,
That is correct.
and above that it says, "All that I have written is real and true to my family's generation mo'olelo in the oral tradition that it has been passed down to me."
That is correct,
And
Judge.
that is your statement?
That is my statement,
Under
Judge.
oath.
Under oath.
Very good, Mr. Lee. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Judge.
We give every witness up to 10 minutes to summarize their testimony if they choose to do so. Would
I
you
do.
like to
I
provide
would
a
like
summary?
to summarize it. May I use the telestrator so that people can see, so that when I go line by line, they can follow?
Sure.
Those do not have it. I appreciate that,
We're just
Judge.
turning on the machine there.
So you can see the relevancy to my testimony as I pointed out.
Wonderful.
Excuse me, Ms. Amato.
Yes.
I want to make sure I'm properly addressing you.
Oh, either way is
what
fine.
Okay, mahalo.
Okay, the copy that I have is, are you putting up there the copy of your testimony?
That is correct, but I put some notes on this.
Okay, the handwritten notes are not
Those
included.
are not in the original.
All right, please go forward.
Mahalo. As I said, my name is Michael Kumukauoha Lee, and I am a Papa Kilo Hoku Poi Poi. Papa, the foundation, Kilo, see clearly, Poi Poi, all around you, including the skies. I want to refer, I'm going to skip my benefides up front. It's there. People can question about it. But I want to go down to my family line 4. Our family clocked in on August 2nd, 2016, SHPD barrel registration form for Big Island, Maui. My 13th great uncles, the Mo'i of Maui burial location, and the family member. That's important because it goes to the sacredness of the mountain and how it's connected to our second piko. First piko is Keakua, the creator of all. Second piko, I'm here to testify to the sacredness of the living mountain and the living island. It's alive through this genealogy. Why? Because Umi Liloa is my 13th great-grandfather, who the trails up there are named after Umi. And I'm going to tell you why he was up there, according to our family mokuauhau. His wife, Pi'ikea'a Pi'ilani, was the daughter of the king of Maui, Pi'ilani. She never got along with Grandpa. She's also my 13th grand aunt. Same thing with Kiha Wahine. My 13th great-grandfather is Kiha'a Pi'ilani, who killed his older brother, Lono'a Pi'ilani, who's buried on the mountain, on the access road, underground, where an underground waterfall is. And most people in this genealogy do not realize that Kiha Wahine, there's the mo'o, there's grandmother, 13th grand aunt, this is her hand, this is in the cave. Most people have never seen a mo'o. She's translucent white. She turned herself upon death into the mo'o wahine. We were of the Olopa'a clan going back to 1200 AD to Raitea for Tamatoa family line. This is from ceremony on Maui where I called her to come, and she came. And it's in our mokuauhau, and the sacredness connected to the living mountain. Why is it sacred? Because the heart of the earth, which is alive, pumps the magma and bleeds here to sustain our life here. The mission of all Kanaka through Wakea and Papa, we're all connected. And we have a mission from Keakua to the life of the land is perpetuated in righteousness. So says our state constitution. This land is alive. It lives in righteousness. That's the mission of Kanaka through this genealogy. The reason why you see all the trails named after my 13th great-grandfather is because he was up there. He knew where the underground caves were. In 1510, his wife, Pi'akea, advised him to invade Maui. And upon doing this, she advised him, Umi, when he left Kohala and arrived in Hana, to kill her father. And upon arriving, they found out he was already dead. So my grandfather said to my aunt, let's leave these people unmolested. She said, no, you have to go after my older brother and take him out. She was very close to my grandfather, Kiha Pi'ilani. And 5 months later, he killed my uncle. And his ka'ai was taken up here, which is where the burial registration form locates exactly where he is. Kiha Wahine is very important because she didn't just marry Malama. She niaupio'd her older brother, Lono'a Pi'ilani. That's why she's up there, purpose, motive, okay, to protect him in the underground caverns. He also married another kupua, a shark goddess. And in my testimonies, I do talk about on the northern slopes by Ka'apahu, where my family have always lived, and the royal patents were keepers of the underground cave there. That's the northern rift zone of Mauna Kea. There are two nostrils that come down from the top of the mountain and come down to the ocean. And that's where the shark goddess comes up. Okay. So we're talking about these two sections here. My family lives over here, Royal Patent. In this ahupua, here's this section. It's like a nostril. Okay. This was never in the AIS. Never in the AIS. Okay. Here's the sacred site. Okay. Upside down. Thank you. Here's the sacred site. This is how Maui is connected to Mauna Kea. Okay. These are the sacred sites on Haleakala, the birthplace of Kahikili Nui Ahumanu. Kekuia Poiva I gave birth here. Right here is Mauna Kea. Right here is Mauna Kea. Manai Akalani, Maui's fishhook, which is his ma'i, he mated with all the chiefly lines, raising up the islands.
Mr.
So-
Lee, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
May I ask you to slow down just a
Oh,
little
okay.
bit? I apologize.
Thank
I
you.
really want to be sure that the court reporter
I'm sorry.
can take down everything that is said.
So here's Mauna Kea, and Mauna Loa is here. There's a reason why that is there. We have to chant coming. We have to chant coming in. And you have the Manaya Kalani, which is positioned where the fishhook comes right over here in January, 4 o'clock in the morning. This pyramid represents the shadow of Haleakala. In June 6th, the shadow is in a big pyramid here. As the sun is setting at 6:45, it casts a huge shadow. That is the shining path of Kanaloa, related right here to the fishhook. This shadow, at a different time period, marks where Kekuiwa Poia I, where her family comes from, the Big Island. Okay, we're related to her, and she's having her baby here in the 1700s. As her legs open, the baby comes out facing Mauna Kea. Now, what we have to do in our family lineage is we have to chant the Rainbow Bridge. Okay, so you see in this, there is no Rainbow Bridge connecting. In this, you see the Rainbow Bridge as I'm chanting, connecting to Mauna Kea. Here, going here, going out to connect. Okay, aka cord, aka shadow. Here, here. The intention of Keakua, who creates all things, our Hawaiian people were created to do three things: heal the land, heal the water, fresh water, heal the ocean, and heal the sky. We are the keepers of the living land, the living sacred Mauna Kea through Piko 2. Piko 1 head, Piko 2 in your belly button, Piko 3 in your ma'i. This is the outside coming in, where we chant in. This is at the 7,000-foot level so the baby can breathe. Okay? So this is all the connectivity, not to a special mountain, as Governor Ige said, but a living sacred mountain that rumbles because the magma is always there, like Mauna Loa, Mauna Kea, and Hualalai. We are headed in this generation, moving forward, to turn this planet into Mars, a dead planet. We see it slowly with our oceans, and we're moving down that path. Keakua knew we would go there, so he created the Hawaiian people and the Hawaiian Islands to be here when we get in this global warming, to show the path to navigate the correct pono way. The life of the land is perpetuated in truth and righteousness. And we are the keeper, the Hawaiian people are the keeper of this knowledge as we are turning our planet into Mars. So, the connectivity of this, when I do the sacred rites, I turn 85 years old. This is me with the white hair. And this is me 1 month before with the salt and pepper hair. This is me after a chant to Papa Nui, Mother Earth. This is me in a chant to Tupele, looking 29 with no wrinkles. And this is 4 months later in 2012, doing the Waihaka to see the transit of Venus, and my hair turns all white, and then it goes back. Because Tutu Pele, my 18th great-grandmother, this is the moon, this is Mauna Loa, Pua Veo Veo here, this is the Po Ele Ele. As you see, this cloud here is the Veil Nebula in Cygnus, 2,600 light years away, being seen in the day. She allowed me to take the picture to show where our ancestors came 50,000 years ago. This is our star ancestry. And they told me where it began with Papa Nui Haumea in one constellation, and I'm not going to name it so people go and look it up, and how she moved and migrated to another where she met Vakea, and she migrated to Cygnus, and the Cygnus Nebula went supernova, the black hole, Po Ele Ele, Kumulipo talks about this, chant 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, Papa Nui. The reason why Papa Nui, it says in Kumulipo, chant 12, keeps on marrying her children because of the star connection of our Mokuauoha. They don't have bodies. They akua noho or akua ohane. They go into the body of the chosen vessel. These are the Papa Nui women who control the next generation. It's genetic engineering. And it's the same personality going into another vessel. And that's how you have Papa Nui marrying her children and grandchildren for 500 years. These are treasures that were kept in our family lineage, but are being called to open up the box because it is needed. No more kapu for this. We have to put it on the table to help people understand why the Mauna is alive, why my auntie is protecting underneath this road, and why Keakua allowed this to happen, because he wants this to come out. The living earth with its living soul in the center, alive, pumping the blood, the magma to this island, the life of the land, land, it's alive in our state constitution, perpetuates in righteousness. Kanaka, in ha'aha'a humility, we are all under Wakea and Papa. They're all my cousins. This genealogy I talked about is every single Kanaka that is living today is this genealogy. How important it is to perpetuate our planet, which is alive, that's headed towards Mars. I mean, they're going to send billions of dollars to go to Mars, and we're going to turn into Mars unless our mission is accomplished. And this is part of the mission. Keakua wanted to give Olelo voice to the mission of all Kanaka, and that's why we're standing up. This is not a special mountain. It's alive. The 2.3 earthquakes and 3.0 register on the USGS, as well as Mauna Kea, Pu'uo'o, and Halima'uma'u. The lifeblood is moving through as Mo'inanea and Kihawahini protecting her Niaupio husband. Their family line is Kapu. It's not meant for me to talk about them, nor Ka'ahupahau. She's also married, and she is a guardian. This was never in the AIS, and this is a real shortfall because this has been registered in Article 12, Section 7 in our cultural practice within the state constitution, that a lot of people have said there are no practices up there. And I really beg to differ because we put into evidence the actual practices that do take place up there in this, okay? Where we do Ava offerings in these two sites from the AIS of 2009. These are the two moon sites. Mauna Kea, the mountain creates weather. It's a microclimate. So when the Kona winds come in October and go up the mountain, and if it's a new moon, there will be frost on the mountain. Why? We've seen it Papakilahoku for thousands of years. So the weather patterns and the wind patterns, the Naulu winds and Naulu rains in November and December bring in the nehu fish, anchovies. What's the significance? When they come in, all the big fishes go after them. And the mountain is feeding our people. Kumulipo Chant 1, the broad stream, subsurface stream, and the below stream, the man stream, bring fresh water as the connectivity of this giant weather system, microsystem, that brings prosperity through fresh water on the land and through our fishery, making the 13 lemurs grow. So all the fish come in year-round to make our fishery. The more you have to eat, the more fish you have. So the opportunity for abundance remains without collapsing the source. That's what we mean by good management. Konahiki, Makahiki, and Kapu, never mentioned in the AIS. Talk about a drop-off of understanding what our cultural significance through this sacred piko, from Keakua to his mandate for his kanaka, to be the stewards of the land the right way without collapsing the source, where our world is headed to become Mars. And we see it happening, even the so-called you-know-who of the United States denying this Trump thing, denying the existence of what is happening to our world. So this is significant through this genealogy.
Excuse me, Mr. Lee. I wonder if you could take a minute to complete your summary.
Okay, mahalo. So in summary, the underground caverns below and the fresh water, where there's water, there is life. Lono, the shaft of life. This mountain is so significant and sacred, it is not to be destroyed. The best place to put telescopes in outer space, because they have no problem seeing clearly. This mountain is alive and sacred, and it's protected by our state constitution, Article 12, Section 7. Mahalo.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Now everyone's going to have a chance to ask you some questions. So I'd like to begin with Ms. Ward.
Good morning, Mr. Lee.
Good morning.
My name is Deborah Ward. Thank you for your testimony today. I don't have very many questions because I have so much to learn. But I wanted to ask you a couple of things. Do you believe that the resources of the mountain, do you believe that the water resources of the mountain are directly linked to the coastal waters?
Yes.
And how is that?
Because the mountain itself has pahoehoe lava tubes. When it was created, the lava was going up, and then as it's going up, it's also melting side fissures, yeah? So we see that in Puna. You know, it comes out of Pu'u'o'o and then sinks down because it's just melting. It's about 3,000 degrees to 2,000, and it melts through the existing lava rock and creates what we call pahoehoe lava tubes that go right to the ocean. And as you can see, they create new underground caves. And so when the lava subsides, these are water collectors. It's in reverse. And so the rain comes and it uses it as the piping system. And that piping system was created over millions of years, layer by layer, with all of these pipes going down into the ocean.
Thank you.
And another thing, to answer fully your question, the springs we see in the sea come from Mauka. We see it in Kumulipo Chant 1, 2,300 years ago, that talk about the traversing of the connectivity of the mountain protecting the sea, and the connection is the topical freshwater stream that brings fruits and spores in the season down to the ocean, to the fish as ho'okupu to not eat the limu, the 13 limus, yeah? And same thing with your freshwater springs in the coastal estuary system. This is where the limu just loves the way it percolates through, and you have a rough wave. The more limu you have, the bigger your fishery is.
I see. Thank you. So there's a criterion that the DLNR will be determining whether or not this permit will be considered, and one of those criterion is number 3. It says the proposed land use complies with provisions and guidelines contained in Chapter 205A HRS entitled Coastal Zone Management. Do you believe that that criterion number 3 will be sufficiently addressed?
No, and the reason is these are some of the known pathways that we have. The Kohala system over here by Mahukona, and also the Hamakua system that is directly related to Mauna Kea. And so the fishery is dependent on this huge pu'u collection system with this pohoihoi lava tube to keep our fishery alive. Now, when they put this up, I was in the BLNR boardroom in 2013 with Hank Fergestrom, and I objected at the time because they said, they being University of Hawaii, they wanted to get their permit redone, but TMT was a part of it. That's why they were wanting to get their permit redone for Mauna Kea, UH. And I said, look, you're going the wrong way, and I gave them my contact information so they could get this. I was never did they come to me, never, but I gave them due warning with due care and due time, and I gave my information to the people, and I'm on record, and they refused to contact me. So that tells you how true their intentions were. And I have a track record on Oahu. You know,
Can I follow up with that question? You mentioned the AIS. Could you tell us more about how you believe that system should work and how it worked in your case?
I believe those who showed up to the board room 3 years ago and let them know personally that we're going to conduct this, that we were available and willing to open up the treasure box to protect the sacred living mountain. And they refused to come back. I've been invited by Imiloa, UH Hilo, to do several Papakilo Hoku presentations for the telescope people as well as the general public. So I was known as a Papakilo Hoku who showed up to meet with them, but they refused to let us in the door to open up the books to say, why, stay away from here, stay away from here, stay away from here. And so to me, it invalidates their AIS because there was no good faith. And the Supreme Court in its ruling said you have to have good faith and take this seriously, especially with our culture. And they refused to do it.
So did they fail to contact you?
That is correct.
And you requested that they contact you?
That
they
is
failed
correct.
to contact you.
On both accounts, that number 1 and number 2 is correct.
I see. And in opening the treasure chest or the secrets of the family, disclosing the secrets of the family, do you feel that that would have made a difference?
I believe so, because in our burial site registration, we mark off where all the cultural practices are to Hina. The reason why Hina is so important up there in Kani, it's on the northern section, where Kani Makua is. We marked off all the sacred sections dealing with the constellation Kani, which is Algol. See, I'm opening up the box. Algol, there's a gas giant, which is Kanaloa. It's a natural time clock, and it makes a orbit every 6 days. And so the head of Kani sometimes is blue, that's when it's Kani, and then sometimes 6 days later, it's red. That's the natural time clock. They're called Makohelani and Makaha. Makohelani is Algol, the gas blue giant, and Makaha is Kanaloa. Makaha is the sluice gates for our fish ponds, when to open them up and when to close them for our food sustainability. This is how important this is.
I see. So the photograph that you're referring to on the page that's displayed, is that one of your exhibits?
This is one of my exhibits that was filed from what we put in for the SHPD burial sites. And then Hank Fergestrom also put this in, showing where all the streams and underground sites are throughout the entire mountain, which we did put in 2013. And it shows where the religious sites are, the springs are. You see, as a Papakilohoku priest, when you come up there, the mana, the power of doing an Ava ceremony, you don't bring your water. You get it from the spiritual sacred source. So you don't outsource the mana. You get the source. You come to the living mountain with the mana that is there.
Is it important to you that the water that you collect on the mountain be clean?
Yes, because it always has been. Why? Because it always has been. Now, with all these telescopes, I'm sorry, the degradation will take place, and no one can say there's no spills. Even though they have quote-unquote mitigation to bring up trucks or whatever, spills do happen, and the sacredness of the area is degraded. So this compromises our sacredness for the spiritual practice that we've shown up to say time and time again. You know, a lot of this had to go underground, yeah, when the missionaries came, and outsiders dismiss and speak on our behalf, saying, you guys don't do this, you're all Christians. Guess what? We're both. We're both. Because Hawaiians cannot give up 50,000 years of practice overnight, and I mean 130 years since the missionaries, or 180 since they came. Yeah, on Saturday and Sunday, they obeyed the missionaries, and then the rest of the week, they did what they always did.
I see.
Yeah.
So there's another criterion that's considered, and it seems to relate to your testimony, and that is the proposed land use will not cause substantial adverse impact to existing natural and cultural resources within the surrounding area, community, or region. Yeah. Do you believe that the 30-meter telescope project would add a significant impact?
It would, because Kealoha brought out a long time ago when she worked up on the mountain of the mercury spills that did take place up there. Even though they have protocols, a spill is a spill, contamination will take place when they start pumping. Accidents do happen in the real world. And the cleanup, once it spills and starts percolating down, you can't undo that. It'll have cumulative effects, and it'll get in the underground system, and it will cause destruction and harm, imminent harm to our cultural practice and to the fishery that picks up the underground water that, as I said, like a nostril in your two nostrils in your nose, goes down to the Hamakua fishery on that section.
Thank you. I wish I knew enough to ask you more questions, but I'll stop there. Thank you.
You did pretty good.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Ward. Ms. Bishoda?
Aloha.
Aloha kealoha.
How are you?
Very good, fine, thank you.
Thank you for taking time to speak these important things.
Mahalo.
I know it's a lot to speak to those huna things, and I respect you for that. Okay. When you're speaking of some of these things, you're speaking to the mystical realm of the akua, such as Kiha Wahine, no?
Yes.
Sorry. Correct.
Correct.
Yes. And then the genealogy of the Kiha Wahine, and then therefore Mo'oina Nea Ma, yes?
Correct.
Okay. Can you expand a little bit on when you said the three picos?
I will.
Akua, sorry, yes.
From the head is the first, which is the past. The creator of all things is the past that created the now. So that is the past with the intention of the will of creation. Then it goes to the belly button, which is the second pico, and these are aka chords. The sky is the spiritual blueprint of God's creation, reflecting what is coming down here. So all the sacredness is above, and it filters down in power aka chord shadows that connect to the ground. It tells where the mo'i is supposed to be, where the tatau artist is supposed to be, where the slaves kawa are to be born and die. And it tells where the burial sites are supposed to be in each month as the sky levas. That's Kumukauoha chant 14. So that's, and then you get to the second pico, which is your connectivity back 50,000 years to La'ila'i and Ki'i. La'ila'i was star parent. Ki'i was a human man, okay? And that's 50,000 years. That's Kumukauoha chant 8, 9, 7, 8, 9. Okay, chant 11 is the Pele family, yeah, right to the big 3,000-foot tsunami at the end. Okay, 12 talks about Papa and Vakea. It doesn't go in a timeline; it jumps from different. We know the exact time period, but second pico, it is connected to this family from our star Mokuauhau to this magnificent journey of Keakua to allow all of this happen, for this living earth, for this living land, to be the guardians and protectors and keepers. Papa Bray said one day in his temple that the whole world will look to Hawaii because it'll be in trouble, and we will have the answers in our Mokuauhau. That's second pico. Third pico is your genitalia, the future. So male, the creator father, female, the pico, and the child, when the two male and female come, they rub together and you get a piece of mom and dad. So Kane Wahine is the future. Half, half. Boom. So it's a triality, not a duality.
Okay, mahalo. Can you speak a little bit on the, was it Vailaka? Vailaka? No.
Vaihaka.
Oh, haka.
Vaihaka.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that, oh, sorry. I got to slow down.
So,
I will do it, and it's right here.
yes, can you show? Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, mahalo.
The Vaihaka is the water mirror in the sky, which is connected to all the Ava ceremonies. It's done by the pattern of the moon, yeah? Because when you properly do the Ava ceremony, you're scooping up the stars and the moon and the gods from the Aka shadow of power. Oh, sorry. I'm being told. Okay, so we're talking about here, these constellations here. You set up your Ava bowl, or the Ava bowls that are cut in stone are set up to the sky points of the sky Waihaka. What is that for? We use it for daytime, where we have a lava glass mirror where we can see, and we have seen over thousands of years, sunspots, auroras, which we call the moa, okay, because the chicken feathers, and we personified it for royal families on Kauai and Maui so we would remember, see. And the transit of Venus can be seen without burning out your eyeballs, because in the Vaihaka is mirror. What we do, when you get to a Papakilo Hoku site, the uninitiated do not know, you don't bring the bowl, you bring water, and you put it on the stone, and the stone is like a bowl. And what it does is it acts as a mirror. So now wherever you go, you have the mirror that's already positioned for that area where the mana now attaches. When it attaches at the month you're in with 12 midnight, Hoku Iwa or Po'o. That is the Hawaiian GPS for birthstones, sacred caves, because heavy rains can modify, like you see in Yao Valley, it ripped the sides of the mountains down, and it changes the topography, but the GPS, the stars, do not change within thousands of years. They slowly, but in tens of thousands. So you can always find the sacred sites at night for the right month. There is a sacred spring of Ku up on the mountain underground. The two constellations, there are two constellations that show you, Leva, Kumulipo Chant 14, when the stars make precession and move, it continues to show you where the sacred spring of Ku underground is. And they don't even know it, but in the AIS, they saw the rocks and rubble that hide the entrance to the cave to get there. But all they said was a mound. I would have been glad to show them why and what's under there. So we put that burial site naming those things.
Mahalo.
Yeah, cultural resources, protected.
Mahalo. Okay. I have to ask you a couple of these things,
Sure,
technical things,
sure.
much less interesting than what we're sharing. In the last contested case hearing, we needed to, we were accused of not demonstrating our Hawaiian-ness under the law case known as Hanapi.
Yes, I'm well aware of Hanapi.
Okay. So I want to ask you, I believe you already established that, but I'll just ask you straightforwardly, if you're Native Hawaiian,
That is correct.
and if you're traditional and customary Native Hawaiian religious and cultural practices go back before, I think it's 1892 or 62.
That is correct. We are logged in 1510 with Umililoa's trails that are up there.
Yeah, and the mystical realm as
And
well.
the mystical realm is part of it.
Yeah,
the
okay.
sacredness to it.
Mahalo.
Because again, the Waihaka,
Yeah.
Lake Waiau is the Waihaka. And
Right, right.
it is used by Papakilo Hoku to initiate the Olohe warriors. We take the yellow ava, and the entire Lake Waiau site is used, the water is used in the yellow ava ceremony from Waipio Valley. And we call down the kuku, which is the mist, to, if you can't fight your way out of the mist, the kuku, you're not a master. And you don't get to drink the ava because the initiated did not graduate. And the last ceremony of that kind was held by Kamehameha I.
Mahalo. Also, you mentioned in your written direct 6E-43.5, I believe, which is the statute that allows or prohibits the publication of burial sites. Is that correct?
You can sign a process it has for signature either open to the public or not disclosed to the public, because certain of these things are really kapu.
Yes.
And we don't want curiosity people to go up on their own, because there are no guards up there, where we actually show you remove the stones, you can get in. It shows where the cave openings are
Yeah.
over the site numbers of the 2009 AIS, how to get underground.
Right. So would you agree that the 6E 43.5, I believe, I might be misquoting it, but the statute that allows us to identify but also protect the information is for protection. It's not.
It's for
For-
protection. Yeah, it is for protection to the Ivikupuna. There's a sacred waterfall underneath there, and there are sacred pools.
But Shipti itself or the burial council, correct, can have access if needed. Okay.
Yes.
And
And one of the reasons, to complete the thought,
Yes.
This is from Pu'aweoweo. I should have brought more. Yeah. Unfortunately, people are going under there like tours. And that's our sacred water. They're peeing in it, you know, and it goes to the Kohala site and to Kaupulehu. And the Keakealani family who are here are keepers. And we put in a protest to Mr. Downer last year. Nothing was done. We said no public hearing was held with the Board of Land and Natural Resources, which they are tasked to protect our cultural resources, because this is a burial cave as well. But people, somebody showed them the way in, and I should have brought the inner tube one with the lady in the inner tube, and they're having a wonderful time in our sacred sites, which are supposed to be under Article 12, Section 7. They're supposed to be protected by the state.
Yeah, mahalo. Okay. Okay. You spoke about the three things, the konohiki, the makahiki, and the kapu.
Yes.
You were saying that you were hoping to share this and that their cultural resource management and archaeological reports do not include those three things.
They do not.
And can you just give us a brief
Sure.
why they should?
Place, presence, and practice. Okay? The management of responsible resource management. Konehiki is the contract with the sacred. Okay? Sirius is Lono Poko, baby Lono. Orion is Lono Loa, 20-year-old Lono. Taurus is Lono Makua, the three Lonos in the three stages of life, from childhood to adulthood. That's part of the circuit of the three different Lonos doing Konehiki, Makahiki time. The importance of it is to renew the contract in November with the space vagina. What is the space vagina? The space vagina goes right over the ma'i, where Aldebaran is, the uli, his genitals. What is the space vagina? Earth's shadow, aka, sacred shadow of creation, the vagina that brings forth life. And when the shadow comes to the vagina, see, only the Papakilo Hoku know this, the rain comes. Profuse rain, vavai nui, means prosperity, because of the life of the land depends on the fresh water, bringing life back to the land on the mountain and in the ocean. Kumo Lipo chant 1. So, most people don't know in the practices why those little statues are taken on a circuit, because they match the circuit going over the land and the abundance through the mid-range from the ocean, which is Sirius, and the mid-range and the higher mountain range are taken care of by Lono Makua, Lono Loa, and Lono Poko.
Okay, mahalo. So, so that's the cyclic way of caring
Yes.
for the earth and
Yes.
ensuring the three that you identified earlier,
Right.
the land, the water, the
Right.
fresh water, and then what was the third?
The sky,
Okay.
because the cloud signs, the Papakilo Hoku, like I'll give you one. Ua nui kapu he'e. Okay, that's another word for Kanaloa that stands over, what it is it's a nebula. As part of the Milky Way is our Mokuau Hau. So, you know, this voyaging society for how to get to Tahiti, for our family, and I've never seen, the reason why we never came out was it was done improperly when the Voyaging Society in 1975, number one, I was a student at 14, and my teacher said, no, do not say this. And what they didn't want me to say, what I was taught, is our Mokuau Hau, which is the Milky Way. That is where all our sacred ancestors are born, and that's how we get to Tahiti. We don't have to look all over the place. We just follow the Milky Way. So this big ta-da of all these different stars, all you have to do, the Earth, the moon, the moon takes a journey from the northern hemisphere. It takes 11 years to the southern hemisphere, and then it reverses back up. Within the 22 years, there's one point which we are taught for the Kumukauoha current, where to push off. And in 2 weeks, you get to Tahiti, and it was always said in the Voyaging Society, the question was, how can you read the stars when it's blocked off at night by the clouds? How do you know you're going the right way? And we have always known there are 2 times in this cycle where it's autopilot. The currents take you there because the moon sucks you there. So you don't have to do anything. In 2 weeks, you're going to get sucked there. So go to sleep, make love to your wife, tend to the chickens, and you get there. It's so simple. But the make-up stories, and I understand and I love them, but there is a truth, and there was a reason why we couldn't tell what we knew.
Ai. Mahalo.
Mahalo.
And then just the last couple of things here.
Sure.
The freshwater flowing, is it your testimony? Well, first, let me ask you this. Have you ever registered and it's okay if you didn't, but I just want to know if you've ever registered the Hawaiian water use with the Water Commission in relationship to the limu production, because we need the mulivai or the mix of freshwater, saltwater combination to make that grow. So I was just wondering if you had ever registered that or even testified before the Water Commission regarding
Well, number one,
the mulivai.
that's a great question.
Okay.
And my auntie in 1980, she did it. She did it with the U.S. Navy for Mauna Kea. And she showed them where 16 miles out from Mahukona, the underground prehistoric water spouts 6 feet out of the water, 15 miles out at sea. And sometimes it goes down depending on the pressure, where Kanakas went out 15 miles out at sea to put their bucket in to get sweet fresh water. She showed the Navy, they went out, and they verified the fresh water was out there. So that's as close that I can get. As far as myself, my problem with doing what you say, in a commercial environment, as we see Fiji water, our resources are being pillaged and sold off, whether it's sand on barking sand because it resembles the texture and quality of Mars for $20 a pound. It seems that ever since Captain Cook came up, a for sale sign came up, and everything is for sale. Everything that's sacred or special about Keakua's creation of this sacred land is up for sale. Fresh water, prehistoric water 2,000 years ago, is a commodity, yeah? For us, it's life, but to bottle it and sell it all over the world is a commodity, like oil. So for that reason, I was shown by the water konahikis where the huge waterfalls on the northern side of Maui are in the pu'us. That would be a commercial boom to people who would like to take people under there, light it up, and show what we see at Pu'uvava as a commercial stop. And what is not seen is how it affects our limus and the growth. We have seen limus cut off because the water policy for the state is to divert all flowing streams. And in that fresh water surface, we have the mating patterns of the aholehole, moi, mullet, o'opu. It's like salmon, on and off switch. So are we depleting our resources for the fishery 2 ways? Because we're depleting the surface, we're depleting the lemur, which is the food for the fishery. More food, more fish. Then second, we're cutting off and tapping all the other available resources for development and ag. The policy is, we were taught where the underground water is, that's not doing anything for the ocean that are 5,000 feet below in caves that go 200 miles. Like oil, that could be pumped up in Konahiki, and the policy should be for all 8 islands is let the water flow so that the springs can come back. I'll tell you why. The coral depletion we have right now is because of this bad policy of cutting off streams. What do I mean? The spring water cools the ocean around our coastal estuary systems, keeping the coral cool. But the diversion of streams and waters cuts off those springs, warms our coastal water system, and causes the white that takes over. So we are killing ourselves by not doing what Keakua gave the Kanaka how to do this properly without collapsing the source.
And so I want to ask you this question. If the TMT is permitted to be built, will that adversely impact your Native Hawaiian customary and traditional cultural and religious practices?
TMT is a source of a bad attitude because all those telescopes that came up before says, come one and all, this is not a living earth, this is not a living mountain, it is only spatial, okay, like Pondus. And the thing about it is this Pondus feeds the ocean and makes, have you gone up to the Parker Ranch and seen the death of the land up there? When I was a kid, it was always green forever. Now, you pass brown, it's gray, you know? And that's because of the mismanagement. We're killing the land, the living land. And Hawaii Island is still alive. Oahu's still alive, but not on Oahu, to the north. The veins from the hotspot are coming up in the ocean. So, yes, this is killing because it's the attitude against the sacredness of the living planet and her blood that flows freely here as opposed to Mars. We are headed towards Mars if we don't stop now. And the attitude, decommission all those rusty telescopes because logically the best place to observe the stars is in outer space, period. There is no qualms. Even the scientists or those who put their bids in for this telescope, they say the same thing. You want to see it? Go out there. Why attack this living mountain who is the Hiapo? The Hiapo means the oldest. Do you know how long it took to get from underneath the hotspot to make the biggest mountain in the world? You give license to take it down. You're giving license in bad attitude to go after every mountain. And then we become Mars. What's your purpose? What's your need? An end game when the purpose has always been take it to outer space because within 10 years the technology is null and void. So unless they're doing an SDI thingy, you know, because you can't distinguish a laser beam from a laser beam against the nutsy North Korean leader, outside of that, you should be in outer space.
Will it affect your practices also?
Guess what? When they shut down the access, just to Hawaiians, by the way, I was in there with my contested case. The day the Third Circuit Court judge ruled was the day I was before the Board of Land and Natural Resources saying, I'm a teacher. It's not just for me. I have students. And yes, we go up there. We do not advertise when, where, how we go up there because that's proprietary. It's between me and my chosen students. I don't advertise. This is a in-house family of the blood thing, okay? So you disenfranchised me and my students when you gave the shutdown to only Hawaiians, yet tours could go up there and the Western astronomers could go up there And I'm a native Hawaiian astronomer, and I'm blocked. And this was the first time every person on the board apologized to me. On that day, the judge made his ruling. I almost fell over in my chair because I put the benefides behind the city and county has recognized my Papakilahoku and the bloodline that I've shown you under Sunshine Law to put it up, and all these certificates outlining as a finding of fact by an elective body to my practices that have been out there for 22 years, picked up by the Record of Ledger, at that time the Star Bulletin, of being a Papakilahoku and teaching it at Damien Memorial High School in 1995. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, mahalo.
Thank you, Kealoha.
I have no more questions. I'm running out. Oh. Okay, sorry. One
Sure.
sec. Oh, yeah. So, just for the hearing, you are saying that your Native Hawaiian customary and traditional cultural and religious practices will be negatively impacted. Is that correct?
That is correct, because where am I going to find the cave entrance to do a memorial service to my 13th great uncle? And that's not open to the public. But when it's concretized or asphalt, that's cause of standing of eminent harm, and I'm laying the foundation in public notice and public record with due care, in due time, with due diligence.
Okay. Mahalo.
Mahalo.
Mr. Ching?
Good morning, Mr. Lee,
Good morning, Mr. Chase.
or I should say, good morning, cousin.
Yes.
But we haven't really established how we are connected, but
I can tell you we are, because when you said that, I got a chill down my spine, and that's my internal mechanism of absolutely true. I got a chill down my spine, and that's my internal mechanism of absolutely true.
wow. Very good. In the last question that Kilo asked you, I believe you referred to your 13th great-grand uncle. Did you really mean that, or was it your 13th great-grandfather? Or
Both, because here's the Kumukauoha. Do I have it upside down? I have it upside down. Is it right? Okay, this is right. So here is my grandfather, who's the younger brother of the Ka'ai that's up there, Lono'a Pi'ilani, okay, who their sister here, Pi'ikea a Pi'ilani, married Umi Luloa. So Umi is my grandfather, 13th great-grandfather. These are the two 13th great-grandfathers, and everybody else is auntie.
I see. Well, for your information, Umi is also my 13th great-grandfather. But I wanted to ask you more about the genealogy above that, in that you were talking about Mauna Kea being in other words, our elder mountain brother.
Yes. Yes.
Who are Mauna Kea's parents?
Vakea and Papa, and it goes to the cord. Vakea and Papa is part of our star ancestry. I can tell you where Vakea and Papa met out in the stars, in the constellation Libra. On one side is Vakea, and on the other side, they're two halves of the same. So in the constellation Libra, it looks like a kite. The upper half of the kite is the shark Haumea, okay? And her shark fin is next to Ta'u. Ta'u for Samoa is where all the kings came from. And that Ta'u is the child who could not speak. Ta'u, the grandson of Kanaloa. Okay, let me go back. So at Libra, on one side of Libra is Vakea. There are two Vakeas in the sky, one in the wintertime and one in the summertime. So I'm talking about the summer Vakea. He's on one side, and his right arm is Manai Akalani, Scorpius. And Aldebaran is the red boil from which Kanaloa was given birth to, which is part of the Milky Way, shaped like an octopus head, Ua Nui Kapu He'e. Okay? The big shadow from Haleakala tells you, okay, this is the shadow, the shining black road, okay? This is the shadow right here of Haleakala. Looks like a mountain. That shows you where Kane's star constellation, where he came from. The shadow that is 10 times bigger let's do it this way, comes right over here. It's this big, and it looks like a pyramid. And that behind here, on June 6th, what is standing at 6:45 p.m., if you would blot out the light, is Manaya Kalani, and right next to it where the shadow comes here is Kanaloa. This is the path of his mokuauhau to the star from which he came.
Thank you. So, although we have these stories of these people in our history, these stories also occur in the heavens, as you were talking about Liber, for instance, and whether some of us know it or not, but Liber is also situated next to Manaya Kalani. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And Manaya Kalani is what some people, and including Polynesians, call Maui's fishhook.
That is correct.
Which is also on the earth, related to the picture that you showed us just one time before, looking from Haleakala.
That is correct.
So all of these things are tied in with each other. They're unitary.
That is correct. I must add, to me it's not story, because I live it. In practice, how do you explain me turning 85? And they say, Uncle Mike, your hair is turning white. And they film it, and in seconds, the thing turns white all around. Fluffy white, fluffy white. And as you can see, I have salt and pepper hair, and I do not dye my hair. So when we call the mo'os in front of 6 NARS officers on Maui at the alkali pools with 23 cultural practitioners looking, and I point out in the sand where the 7 springs are supposed to be at La Perouse, past Kihei, past Pu'uolai, and 6 NARS officers witness in 30 minutes 7 freshwater springs right where the arrows are when I call Mo'oinanea to come and clear the springs, and it's videotaped. That's what we have to do. The sacredness gets impeded because, I'll tell you this, when a Catholic priest consecrates the bread and wine into the body and blood of Christ, he is not asked, what is the sacred prayer that you do not share with the public? And it's a sacred prayer. I know this because I studied to be a Catholic priest in 1977, went through 4 years. There's a sacred prayer, he says on the altar, away from the microphone, asking the Holy Spirit to do it.
I see. Okay, so earlier on, you also mentioned the shining path of Kanaloa.
Kanaloa, yeah, the shining path of
Is-
Kanaloa and Kani.
Yes. So is there any relationship between the shining path of Kanaloa and Kohe o Kanaloa?
That is different. You know what, Kohe Kanaloa? I'll tell you what it is. It's Capricorn shaped like a vagina. And that's why, this is, most people don't know this. Kaho'olawe's ancient name was Kanaloa and Kohe Malama. Because when leva in Kumulipo chant 14, Uanui Kapuhe'e stands right over the island in one season, and as it levels, the Kohe goes right above. And then Kamapua is chasing after it with his mouth open. She's protecting her sister by distracting Kamapua right next as he makes his turn going for the goodies.
Amazing stories. Anyway, I believe that in your genealogy, there are such people also as Kuali'i,
That is correct.
Kakuhi Hewa,
That is correct.
You talked about Umi's trails going up the mountain.
That is correct.
Would this be connected to what on the map is the Umiko Trail?
Yes. And the reason why is because he had a garrison up there underneath. Remember, the underground stays at a consistent temperature because they're 54 degrees, because there hasn't been the permafrost up there, you know, with the big ice sheet from prehistoric times. Underneath, the weather is manageable. So he kept a division up there because they knew the outlets. All those pu'us have outlets, as I told you.
I see.
So when you're the king of the island and you have the highest position and an invading force is coming and you go down from the mountain with a group and come up behind them, you get the picture for maintaining control of the island.
I see. Are you familiar with what some people call the Ka'ula Trail?
No.
Okay. Are you familiar with the springs as Hopo'okane?
On the mountain?
Yes.
Yes.
And how are those springs connected with, say, Lake Waiau? Or if anything, I mean, what is your story about that?
It is connected because, you know, Lake Waiau, they don't talk about why it's disappearing and why those pipes are there. You know, the military doesn't, the federal government military does not go through the process to protect our rights. So Lake Waiau is a part of the gates of the gods. The gates are the coming in of the south wind, coming up the Mauka, creating a microclimate, turning it into clouds that give the source of the water that goes by Lake Waiau, the bosom of Kane, the Po'o o Kane, down and creates all those springs on the southeast, southwest side that go down to where the military is using the land there.
I see.
You know,
At Pohakaloa?
at Pohakaloa.
Okay. Okay. Are you familiar with the idea that the high mountains on Hawaii Island, namely Mauna Loa and Mauna Kea, and how they may affect some of the winds and currents through the whole entire length of the so-called state of Hawaii?
Yes. Number one, the Ka'uvili current that comes down from Keala o Kahiki, where Kaho'olawe is.
It's the western
the
point
western
of
side of it
Kaho'olawe.
shoots down because, you see, for Papakilo Hoku, this is chant 12 of Kumulipo. In the mention, it says Hawaii. And this is Serpent's Kaput, which is a double canoe. The island of Hawaii is a canoe. Mauna Loa is the bow. Mauna Kea is the stern. Maui is a turtle. Okay. So this canoe controls the currents. The Ka'uvili current comes down and shoots out to Kalai in the south point. The Halaea current comes from the east and shoots out, and the two create that corridor that we have Orion and we have Taurus that makes up the canoe.
Right.
When the moon jumps in the bow of that celestial canoe, that is the bailer, okay? Then when it jumps in the sail, kainui, it's time to go because it matches up with this Ka'uvili current and Halaea current, and in 2 weeks, you get to Tahiti, not 6 weeks, 2 weeks. That is autopilot. It shoots out all the way to Tahiti.
Okay. And then, about some of these currents, do they affect the fisheries?
Most certainly do. Say the Halaea current or the Camilo current. Camilo current goes from Puna and shoots out to where the green sand beach is, which in ancient times was Camilo. And on one side, if you were to drown riding surf out at Puna, you're a li'i, your body will be deposited on the rough rock side. If you're a commoner, on the green sand side. It takes 2 days to move in that current, okay? So the timing based on the moon, which is Mahina Ai, that provides the rain to come on land during the rain moons. And by the way, most calendars are incorrect because on the 17th day of moon for Ho'oilo, they have Kulua. And then in summertime, they have Kulua. But it's not Kulua, it's Moku for Kau, summer. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mahalo.
I have enjoyed our little conversation here.
Mahalo.
Thank you.
Mahalo.
I have no further questions.
We'll be in recess for 10 minutes, please. Okay, let's get started, please. Okay, Mr. Lee, if you could take the stand, please. Mr. Lee, the testimony that you're about to give will continue under the oath you took earlier to tell the truth. Do you agree with that?
I agree with that. I do.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Mr. Flores?
Aloha, Mr. Lee. My name is E. Kalani Flores, and I represent the Flores case Ohana.
Aloha.
No. I just have a few questions for you. But the first question, since you've used this terminology in your written testimony as well as your oral testimony, could you please briefly summarize what you refer to as a papa kilo hoku?
Okay, papa is pretty much the foundation. Kilo is actually Gemini. The two mahoi together, they are seen very clearly. So papa, to see clearly in the sky, hoku, the stars, and then they usually have poi poi, which is 360 all around you. It's a compass.
Okay. And so this type of, could we refer to as a cultural practice or a cultural tradition?
Well, I got to tell you, Papa Kilo Hoku is a kahuna, and it's the highest kahuna because within our teachings, we are taught ana ana. We are taught ku, kane, kanaloa, pele, kamapua'a practices. And the reason why is because what we keep are the sacredness of all the gods, which are in the constellation, and the smaller stars. You know, there are 3,000 visible stars. So if you were to take away the night pollution, you would be inundated with stars. We're taught the small stars in between the stars. And they are a representation of boundary zones for sacredness, where the kahuna nui is supposed to live, is under, there are several kahuna stars and 6 heiaus in the sky. There are 6 canoes in the sky, all of different design. That is the master blueprint of what you're supposed to do and where you're supposed to position yourself in every month to leva. In Wailea 670, for a 600-acre parcel for Goodfellows in Kihei, I was brought in to identify where Konohiki, Makahiki, and Kapu, using my star knowledge, working 10 hours a day for over a week, I built the entire village back, where the canoe houses are supposed to be, the tatau artists are supposed to be, where the mo'i is supposed to be, everybody in their place, with the entire, ku is the rising of the sun, po'o is the head, hoku'iwa, and hina is the setting. So breaking up their map into an entire month and where the sun position took place and where the stars laid over everything, I put together the entire village. And they accused me, they being the archaeologists, that I put all the ku and hina stones, which they found with my map, up on the property. I'd never been on the property. And where the mo'o caves were and the heiaus were, based on the time of the movement of the sun throughout the year, timed in with Konehiki, what I was taught for the 3 lonos, where everything is supposed to be. They found everything I put, and they swore that I had manufactured it in a big truck, went up on the property, and put all these sacred sites up. And it's part of the record. But all the AIS scientists could say C-shapes, planters, and some other nonsense. And our culture was not C-shapes, planters, and features, but that's what the assessment was.
And so with this Papa Kilo Hoku knowledge, as you were describing, is it fair to say that the archaeologists don't have all the answers regarding our cultural sites?
That is correct.
Thank you. And so is this, in regards to this particular tradition associated with the Papa Kilo Hoku, is it a tradition and knowledge that's been continuously passed down to your family, to you?
Yes, Pele Iholani, my 7th great-grandfather, was a Papakilo Hoku.
Thank you. So it's very evident that the depth of your knowledge is expansive. Is it fair to say that your written testimony and your oral testimony only represents a small part of your knowledge as a Papakilo Hoku?
That is correct. I can actually be here for 6 months giving you a tutorial how in 1896 in Tahiti, they actually gave visual maps of the stars. I know 1,000 Polynesian stars and 3,000 Hawaiian stars. And I could lay it out for you why the Tahitian maps are what they are, give the names of all the gods, and show it how it matches up to Kumalipo, Martha Beckwith's myths of Hawaii, and how it all makes sense. But we would be 3 months doing that 6 hours a day.
And I know our hearing officer has limited our in this contested case hearing to not to that extent. So my questions are going to be brief and to the point. But with that, we have an understanding that we're only looking at a small portion of this knowledge and tradition that you're speaking about. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Now, in regards to Mauna Kea, is it accurate to say, based upon your knowledge and traditions and experience, that there are significant cultural sites on that mountain?
Boy, are there. Yes.
And is it accurate to say there are significant cultural sites on the northern plateau of Mauna Kea?
There are indeed.
You also mentioned that there are alignments between Haleakala and Mauna Kea. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Now, in one of the photos that you presented, and before I go further, and I'm going to perhaps ask that if it's permissible for later, that you could perhaps, through your party, Mr. Harry Ferguson, if some of your pictures and exhibits, some of your pictures and diagrams that you've presented during your oral testimony could be submitted as exhibits and identified in the record. Is that possible?
If the hearings officer, I believe, says it's okay, unless you have a covenant that it was already stipulated that that was acceptable under your covenants, the answer is yes.
So personally, you would have no problem if these pictures and exhibits were entered into?
The reason why I didn't enter it into
Sir,
the-
just a
yeah.
minute. Mr. Flores, there's a process for doing that.
Okay.
So if Mr. Ferguson chooses to
Okay.
offer them, he's welcome to do
Okay.
so the same way everyone else has.
Okay. And so I asked if for you personally, is there any restrictions or couples attached to any of these photos or exhibits that you may not want them to be entered into the record?
The answer is yes, there are couples to this, but because I'm the living caretaker of this knowledge, I can exercise the right to bypass the couples for the good of the mountain that says they're asking, and some of these parties here are saying that there are no practices. This is a dead religion. It's not being practiced. Under those circumstances, I will.
Okay, thank you.
And thank you, Mr. Mano. I will follow the procedures that have been identified and placed in. Thank you.
Now, in one of your pictures that you shown during your oral testimony previous to my being here, there were several upright stones in your cultural practice. Were those particular stones on? Let me see here.
The cover is on. Just take the cover off.
I think you may have to flip the picture around. So I'm not sure what exhibit number this would be entitled, but in this particular photo, you have 3 photographs on this page. Is that correct?
That is correct.
You have 1 photograph on top and 2 on the bottom. Is that correct?
That is correct.
The photograph on to the right, is that you in the picture?
That is correct.
So going back to the photo on the top of the page, are those 2 upright stones?
That is correct.
Were those 2 upright stones set up by human, or is it a natural configuration?
They were set up by human, and what you're looking at is going on the outside, and this is the other side. So this looks like a woman carrying a pregnant baby, and that's the other side of this fish hook, which a closer picture shows this closer, and the framing of, because what you don't see is because we run out of battery. There's a cave behind here where the party stayed at night. They had to carry a pregnant woman, Kikuia Puiva 1, up. There's a place for the retainers, and there's a cave where the mo'i stayed. And the birthing stone is directly back here, where the legs would be spread, and the baby would come out looking at Mauna Kea.
Mr. Lee, I'm going to ask you to listen to the questions and answer them
Okay, will
directly.
do.
The reason is, I think Mr. Flores wanted to ask you about the uprights for a specific reason.
Thank you.
So please go forward, Mr.
Thank you.
Flores.
So maybe let's go back to the original photograph, because at least we can identify this exhibit when it's a given exhibit number.
Okay,
But at least we know there's 3 photographs on this particular page.
that is correct.
So taking a look at the picture on the bottom left,
This one?
what is the orientation? Is that facing towards Mauna Kea, or is that facing up towards?
This is, the back part is Haleakala on the southeastern side, and it's facing Mauna Kea's right here.
Okay. So,
Mr. Ferguson,
Yes.
do you have an objection?
No, actually,
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were going to object. Oh, okay. Go ahead, Mr. Flores. Sorry.
okay. So why are stones set up in upright in these particular configurations? What's the, so you said, okay, let me retract that question. Let me set up a foundational. Who set these particular stones upright?
This was set up before the birth of Kahikili Nui Ahumanu, who was born circa 1710. So these stones were there before he was born.
Okay, thank you. And what's the purpose of, can you clarify further, why are these stones set up right? Is it for a particular alignment or orientation or something as such?
To all of that, yes, and I'll tell you, it tells a story forever as the memorial story of the Aka cord. And Aka cord is spiritual, but it also, as the rainbow shows, it's also that. The Aka cord is also the shadow from a solar eclipse. What they're saying and pointing out, the positioning that they're put there were in the eye of the beholder, who had a reason of the connectivity with the genealogical lineal line of the Pi'ilani clan, the Paumakua Maui clan, is connected vis-a-vis Mauna Kea as the anchor of the family, yeah, to the royal lineages of Maui and the Big Island through Mauna Kea, okay? And they use the setting of the sun at 6:45 to cast the island's Aka cord shadow that is shaped like a pyramid that reaches out in this family pico to the exact place where the living people here on Maui's ancestry came from, the Big Island. So it's a marker of a spiritual genealogy in our religion of 3 Aka cords.
Thank you. So is it fair to say that you have similar type of upright stone alignments on Mauna Kea, looking orientated back towards Haleakala?
That is correct. When the sun is rising in the southeast, the shadow of Mauna Kea will shoot out, and it will face going back to Haleakala. As you can see over here, this is the northern part. This area that looks like an island is the shining black path of Kane. Yeah? It also shows where the burial caves are, and I'm not going to point it out,
Okay.
because that determines the Aka cord of birth to death.
Okay. And I'm going to just reference this particular photograph that you just are showing us for the record until we get an exhibit number for it. So this particular, there's 2 photographs on this page, is that correct?
That is correct.
On the top photograph is, can you explain what that photograph represents? Or give me sessions?
To explain it, we kano'iwi. Kano'iwi means we plant our ancestors' bones in the religious rites. I've done it since 1983, over 30 years ago, of my grandfather's bones. Through our genealogy, his bones were planted in the ocean in the coral with his spear. And it was kapu. Only my mother and I, who share his sacred name, could do this. None of the family members, I have an older brother and sisters, and my grandfather had 9 sisters and tons of family. None of them could come to the kano, the planting of my grandfather. All of this deals with life and death through our cosmology and through where, you see, the representation of the mauna on its highest level is the ali'i. The foundation is the people. So the mountain screams out in sacredness, the connectivity to the Aka cord of the genealogy, because it also shows the pathway to Tahiti from where we came, with the, as I said, over here is the Manai Akalani, the ma'i or penis of Maui, who is the progenitor to all royal families of the island chain that with his mating of all of our mokuauhau, he raised up all of the islands. And the shadow shows where we came from to Tahiti. So it reaches out even further than the Big Island and shoots up. That's why the Big Island is a canoe, because it takes us back to the land of the Akuas.
Okay, and going back to the first picture at the top of the page, where when the photograph was taken, where is the person standing?
We're here.
And where is here?
Here is on top Haleakala. I don't want to give out.
Right, you don't have to give out
the
specific,
total
so you're on Haleakala, and the picture is orientated
to the
looking-
northwest. So
Okay.
the northwest is here. The northeast is here in orientation.
Okay, when you say here, with the record, when it says, when you look back on the record, when you say here, you're not going to know what here is. So if you look at this photograph, and you're on Haleakala, and you're saying to the right of the photograph is, what are you referring to the right of the photograph?
If I had a pen, I could point it out.
He wants you to articulate it so that the record shows what you're talking
The
about.
written record.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So from my right hand
Yes.
to my left hand, my right hand points out this mist. This is the northeast on this section of the upper picture of Haleakala, where
Okay.
my right finger is pointing.
Okay, thank you. And then you mentioned something on the left side of the photograph?
On the left side of the photograph, this is the northwest quadrant of the horizon.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify for the record your orientations in that particular photograph. So, based upon your cultural knowledge and traditions, if the proposed 18-story TMT structure is built in the proposed Northern Plateau, would it interfere with these alignments and orientations with these cultural sites?
The answer is yes, because I'm trying to show how important the view plane is. Because what I didn't put on the table is the rising of the Pleiades. Remember I said Konahiki, Makahiki, and Kapu? In July 23rd, at 3 o'clock in the morning, the Pleiades will rise here, and it will look like a giant tree, 5 times bigger than the rising moon, 5 times bigger. And the Pleiades blue stars are called Vaiti, Vaite, Vaita, because it looks like crashing, dashing, smashing water, because they blink in sequential dun dun dun, drum, boom, boom, boom. It's a living waterfall, okay? So for us, in our sacred rites, to block this view plane is not only heva, but it would be like constructing a concrete high-rise in front of the Wailing Wall, or in Mecca, to obstruct the religious practice that goes on there, or to do the same thing to Mount Fuji.
Okay, thank you. And just to follow up, what is the translation of the word, the Hawaiian word? First of all, could you spell it, and could you give us a translation of the word you mentioned as heva?
For us, that's sinful, that is not pono. What pono is if you order, this is the opposite, so I'll do it on the opposite part to make it easy for people to understand. If you order pipes for your house to conduct water, and you have specifications to the contractor, and the order comes and they do not fit perfectly, that's heva. And if they do, that's pono.
Okay, and is that term spelled H-E-W-A?
That is correct.
And then pono is spelled P-O-N-O, is that correct?
That is correct.
For the record. So I'm just going to conclude by stating that, or asking I should say as well. I mean, you have clearly demonstrated that your Native Hawaiian cultural practices are connected to Mauna Kea. Have you ever been consulted by any representatives of BLNR or DNR regarding your cultural practices on Mauna Kea?
No, I have not.
Have you ever been consulted by any representatives of the university or the Office of Mauna Kea Management regarding your cultural practices on Mauna Kea?
No, I have not, Mr. Flores.
I'd like to thank you, Mr. Lee and your ohana, for sharing your knowledge on Papa Kilohoku and your traditions, your family traditions as such.
Mahalo, Mr. Flores.
Thank you, Mr. Flores.
Okay, just a last follow-up question. So, is it fair to say that your Papa Kilohoku traditions and knowledge is knowledge within your family and not necessarily knowledge that other families have?
That is correct, and yet one point to be accurate, I cannot speak to that clearly simply because in my spirituality and my prayer, I was given permission from Keakua to bring this out. Other families who may be watching on the Big Island do have this in the box, but they were not given the permission, as when I was 14, I wanted to go to teach them what I would learn, and I was told not to. So we have to respect our elders that are living. When they pass away and we carry the burden of making that decision, it's personal. So to be honest, there may be families out there on different islands that everything I brought out of the box, they have it in the box too. But for their spirituality, they decided that this was not meant to be.
And I just once again reiterate that we'd like to mahalo for sharing this with us, and thank you, Your Honor, for allowing us to ask these questions.
Thank you, Mr. Flores. Ms. Aluli?
Mr. Lee, I'm Euclid Aluli, and I represent Kahea. I have a question about, you had a piece of paper that you were showing as a drawing with boundary zone earlier on it. And I have it as an exhibit that was given by Mr. Ferguson.
Is it this one?
Yes. And so do you know what that exhibit number is? Is it written on there?
No, because as you know, I could have submitted all of these in my original submission. And I kind of wanted to do two things. I didn't want to give it out so that I could, in this dissertation, talk about it, but not put it into evidence because of the nature of this. But because the cause is greater than keeping it back, because people, or there are parties here who are shouting. There are no practices, and under an evidentiary hearing, cause of standing of eminent harm must be foundationed in, and to do that, you have to have evidence under the rule of evidence. So yes, we can, at a later date, what Mr. Flores asked for these two, notice I'm being very specific, and for this, which is already in the evidence, this is part of the SHPD burial site. There's like 60 pages of other goodies in there. But the reason we actually redacted where the entrances are and the burials are. So
this is its origins are a paper that is with Shifty.
That is correct.
I'm sorry, just a minute. I'm sorry, Mr. Ferguson, did you want to object?
Not quite a bit. I just want to make some clarification. A lot of this stuff is very, very, very complicated. And we will go over it amongst ourselves to see what can and cannot be placed into evidentiary because it just can't be shared. It's
That's
too
fine.
sacred.
So I wanted to say that this is currently online. It's identified as a scan, exhibit number D-4. And I don't know, this is the only one that is. And I know things can be submitted as confidential information under they're rules of the court now. I just don't know if it's possible. I know, that's the thing, because they're confidential at Shifty also.
It's already online
I
at
know,
D4.
it's already,
That which is already in is in for the public.
Right.
yeah.
So,
Okay.
And the reason is, I show where the moons are legitimately, there's something called the neck of the property. And the neck of the property is where, like your neck, the air, the wind, the Naulu winds come through that create the Naulu rains in this micro weather pattern created by the uplift, updrafts, and the cooling of temperatures. So this denotes summertime and wintertime on the access road using the 2009 AIS with all their identifying marks, and all they talk about is piles of rocks. So I'm giving significant kapu meaning that they didn't bother checking with me, even though I asked them in 2013, please, I'm willing to put this in the box so you can make the right determinations of where to go left, where to go right, where to stay away from, so you do not infringe on my rights under Article 12, Section 7. That's why I'm being very open, because someone has to, in the practice, show beyond a shadow of a reasonable doubt that our Ava ceremonies are done with the Mahina eye coming, because they bring the wind and they bring the rain.
And so this drawing states on it that it is on the Mauna Kea Natural Area Reserve on the left-hand side.
That is correct.
And so is it your testimony that this access road that is depicted on this drawing traverses the Natural Area Reserve? Is that correct?
That is correct.
And that on this access road is buried an ancestor of yours.
That is correct.
And so your testimony is that you're concerned that if this access road becomes asphalted, that you would no longer be able to gain access to that burial cave.
That is correct. And there's no weight restriction, yeah, for the big, they're not going to helicopter the big, heavy mirrors. And they may have to use a shipped-in, huge, like what they took the space shuttle, but something much less in machinery that will collapse because the two cave system runs through this road. And because they didn't assess what's below, in my cultural practice, it's an imminent harm because they did not sit down with me and go over so I could draw it out for them.
And you've also testified earlier that you have these photos of a Mo'o deity in a cavern. Are these photos of a cavern below this access road?
No, this was part of a cultural practice access we did on Maui in Kihei. So, but Kihawahine in the written record does go back and forth from Lahaina, where Moko'ula is, and goes back and forth. So when we do our spiritual practice and call her to come, she will come.
So you have not, have you called her to come when you're visiting your ancestor's cave?
I would say that is kapu.
Okay. I just was trying to
Established.
understand, because our inquiry here is, of course, is specifically Mauna Kea, but you've also brought up the issue of how Mauna Kea features in your visualization in terms of the solar and lunar and celestial movements.
May I answer it this way? Because you asked a good question and I don't want to leave it half. Our auntie, in protecting the ka'aya of her Neopio brother, if they do, they being the TMT, this gets approved and they do the stuff and there is an incident, she will come out and she will take care of the bulldozers. They will feel her wrath And I'm on the record saying that now. So if this goes down, I am warning what she will do, because it's happened on Molokai at the fish ponds where the mo'o came out, went after the bulldozer, the guy jumped out. Now, that's part of my testimony for the record. So, you know, those who do not believe but send tons of rocks back from taking it for the national park because of what happens to them, I am laying in the record the unintended consequence. We have warned you. We have warned you. Whether you want to see my hair turn gray right now or whatever, we have warned you.
Thank you.
Mahalo, Ms. Luli.
Ms. Kihoy? Hoy?
Aloha, Anakala.
Aloha.
This is in no reference to you, your hair turning colors, but I've never had so much gray hair in my life. From this past year, it's unbelievable. It really is. I don't have a lot of questions, but I just really mahalo for you for being here today, for flying over here, and for sharing this this beautiful mana'o with us that I know isn't shared openly and publicly. So I mahalo you for being here and sharing that with us today.
Can I tell you why also, since you opened that door? As a culture, the greatest harm that has been done to us is to scrub our memory of who we are and where God's destiny was planted in each of us by our attitude of our second piko. And it was done on the Organic Act of 1900, that if you spoke Hawaiian, you mentioned the Queen, not only would you go to jail, but you were strung up and beaten. The Organic Act was a cultural tool for genocide of our memory, to consistently tear away the power that was given to us and the mandate in our mission to be on this earth. And this was the true crime. There are keepers of the memory. I'm only one. I know there are others, but they're under their own mandates, and I understand and respect that. But this is to what really tore at me was a group here that said there is no cultural practice up there, which, you know, I forgive them because we're all brothers and sisters, and we are friends who disagree. And to make sure the disagreement doesn't turn into war, the one I am a servant of, Keakua'i'o, said, do this in a holy manner like Queen Leleokalani, not to throw stones, but to educate, and that is my purpose.
Mahalo. Thank you for sharing that. And just in response to that, when we were on the summit on April 2nd.
Excuse me, are you going to testify?
Yes, I'm just responding to.
You're responding to a question? There's no question
No.
to you.
To his thoughts.
You have an opportunity to cross-examine.
Okay.
You also have an opportunity to testify.
Okay, that's
But what
fine.
you're going to say now is not testimony. And
Okay,
Okay.
I understand.
Right.
With your background in traditional Native Hawaiian practices and spiritual connections, do you believe Mauna Kea to be a great source of emotional, physical, and spiritual healing?
Yes, Mauna Kea is set up with other mountains by the Creator to protect us. The Earth's electromagnetic field, which is set up from the heart of the Earth that's spinning a quarter of a mile faster than the Earth. The living planet protects us from the solar radiation of coronal mass ejections. Mauna Kea, being anchored to Mother Core, is protecting us. When they put all this metal stuff up there, they're diffusing the ability of the Mauna to do its mission to protect the entire world. And when, as we know by science, The electromagnetic field is decaying within the last 100 years as these telescopes have gone up on these important mountains all over the world. In ignorance, without studies of the arrogance, especially in a time when we know better, go to outer space, but because of the cheapo mentality, it's going to cost $4 billion to take it up instead of $1.4 billion to build it a way that is not necessary, and disrespect for the living mountain and the living earth. And as keepers of most indigenous people, we're turning our planet into Mars. And yet we're spending billions, if not trillions, to get there, when we just have to wait, stay on this course, and we'll be Mars. No ocean, no living entities. We're headed that way. So our mission from Keakua is being obstructed. The memory has to go out, because guess what? I never told you how I got there. My fourth great-grandfather, during the transit of Venus, on a cultural practitioner, Papakilahoku, with Hank Ferguson present, I was told how to get there. Never been there before. I was told how to get there. It's a 3-hour hike in a riverbed I'd never been before. And I told my kiahis, Hank Ferguson and Hannah Bernard, the turtle lady, I'm telling you guys, get your kiheis, come with me. And I was told exactly how to get there. And I was told exactly when I was going to fall. So they gave me my snow gloves, and I fell in slow motion, and I gave it back to them and said, hey, I don't need it. They're telling me I don't need it. I had to chant my mokuauhau from Wakea to Papua because the Pokani were there with their spears saying, kapu, kapu, you cannot come. So I did my mokuauhau chant, wai kamoi, blood of the chief, please come. So protocol was found in our spiritual, and as I was saying that, the rainbow stood because I was listening to them. When we did our chants and went in, I told them time to go back. And they taught me how to tie our kiheis together. And they said, when you would stand on the cinder, it will come. So I told them, and there was a caveat, nobody can pass my shoulder or it will not come. So I showed them, because on the Uhane side, they showed me how to tie the 3 kiheis together. Because it took 3-4 hours to go from the top of the mountain down. Now we were going to go uphill, and we were running out of time. It was coming to nighttime, and we'd freeze to death if we didn't get back up. So as soon as I stepped on the black sand, as they said, and they said I had to retrace all my steps or we would die. Hey, I wish you had told me that before I went down. So as soon as I put my foot down, this huge wind came, and our kiheis turned into parachutes, and we were blown up the mountain. We were living canoes, sprinting up the mountain, and I could see all our tracks, and I was jumping in all our tracks. And we had to stop 4 times because they ran out of breath. Then, as all stories go, Hannah Bernard, who is behind me, the turtle lady from Maui, she crossed my shoulder and the winds died because my mokuauhau was carrying the winds. Okay? So we get up, as soon as she crossed my shoulder, boom, the winds came back all the way up. When we got to the top, said, look down. I looked down. I didn't bring it here. Tutupele's Niho Palawa. She said, you Kanu'iwi, you're my grandson. When you go in Kanu'iwi, you need to hold my Niho Palawa for your ceremony because it glows in the night when I'm over family. It glows white. And so we went up, and then she said, turn around. We turned around at 6:45, saw this massive pyramid, 10 times bigger than Mauna Kea, line up like Orion's belt. We ran out of battery. We would have loved to take in that picture, but we did GPS these sites. We're not dumb. Thank you.
Thank you. Wow. So I just want to clarify that you do consider Mauna Kea to be a great source of healing. Yes, in many ways.
Yes.
Yes. 13 years ago, I was involved in an incident that left me with 5 broken parts in my face. And I was suggested and recommended all these different types of Western therapy and healing and rehabilitation, and I rejected and refused all of them. So there was a pain and a grief that I carried around for about 8 years, not knowing how I could relieve myself from that. And the first time I went up to Mauna Kea, 8 years from that incident, it was lifted. And I knew within me that this mountain was what was going to save me. And I never had that feeling in my life. But I didn't know, because it was the first time I ever went there. I had never gone there before. So I was always taught that it was kapu. So
Now you have the power to ascend. And what do I mean by ascend? The physical limitations that we have with our corporeal fleshy bodies are nothing. This is all but a dream. As we have in our life nightmares that happen, when we get up from our sleep, from nightmares or sleep terrors, we put them aside and we continue with a new dream. Mauna Kea is giving the Hawaiians an opportunity to ascend through knowledge that was put out. So the call is not by happenstance at this time. Because if Hawaiians knew before their time, and I'm going to give you this example, I can bring you an egg, and in it is a yolk of a living thing in a shell. That is the truth. But if I wait 4 months and it hatches, there's an independent enterprise that can make many eggs. So we had to wait till the time was right, because the hatchling is an independent enterprise which will bring back through your mokuauhau, wake you up, and in your dreams, they will come in the second piko to instruct. Because I got one of the questions, and everything the person said was absolutely right, because we have to put the turn on switch. Because in our culture, we have something called pu'uhonua, the reset button. We all are screw-ups, and we all need forgiveness. If we do this in the holy manner, like Queen Liliuokalani, she saw ka'ananiau, the beautiful time when we wake up, take the light, and we become the source for the world in the time of darkness before apocalypse and second coming, to help the world in its darkness, to shut down the living planet and the living sacred mountain.
thank you. Do you believe that with the construction of the TMT telescope that could affect receiving these types of spiritual healing?
I will put it this way. As I said, we are headed for Mars because we take away the Earth's electromagnetic field, which is decreasing. The solar winds will blast away our oceans and kill everything on the land, everything. The radiation will nuke every microorganism that's on the surface. There may be some bacteria 100 feet below the extremophiles, but our oceans will be gone, the plants will be gone, and we'll be Mars too. And this is what the Mauna, the Hiapo, you can take it down. You take all the other protective mechanisms, and we will become Mars. And that's what the unintended consequence of this bad science fair project is leading us to: the death of all life on the surface of this planet and the erosion of our oceans being blasted out like Mars, which we all have the scientific data. And why look up to do that when you can do it in outer space? Just get more people to buy in on your science fair project and put the money down.
Thank you. And just for my last question, do you agree that the construction of the TMT telescope would directly impact the emotional, physical, and psychological health?
When Queen Liliuokalani was in charge, there was no Kanaka homeless. The jails were not filled. The Hawaiian people were, even though after decimated by the disease brought in from outside cultures, they were trying to get back by having 7 or 8 wives out of the 37,000 people that remained, and were headed that way because we were all a product of that, moving to 650,000 now, coming back to the old counts. And my point by saying that is, when you take away a human being's purpose, why are there so many Hawaiians in prison of all the races, and then are being shipped out like cattle to Arizona? And the so-called OHA has done so many studies, but done nothing to help our people, with $33 million chasing after the process that the beneficiaries don't want their process. The harm and injury is to rip away our soul and become empty. And with lack, we are poor beyond measure, without purpose. So nothing can happen because we're totally powerless, because there's a wall of separation between reality and reality. And this struggle is the call to say you must ascend. And how can you ascend unless you walk up the mountain?
Thank you so much, Anakala. I really appreciate
Mahalo.
your thoughts, and mahalo.
Mr. Ashita?
Thank you, Your Honor. May I begin?
Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Sir, you mentioned on multiple occasions during your testimony references to the Hawaii State Constitution. Do you remember that testimony?
That is correct.
And specifically, you cited verbatim provisions from our Constitution. Do you remember that?
That is correct.
And would you agree with me that adherence or respect to the state constitution is a vital part of our orderly society?
I will say yes, and quantify it, since it's open to me to quantify it, is all...
Sir,
Yeah.
it is not open to you to quantify it. I'm going to ask you to answer the questions that are posed to you,
Okay,
please.
then I retract my yes and put it this way. We're trapped in the same net, being Kanaka, and I believe in law, and I believe we're being occupied, but that doesn't matter. What matters is you respect the law, because my order from my highest deity is a holy manner in line with the law that doesn't hurt anybody.
Is that a yes?
That is my answer.
Are you familiar with Article 1, Section 5 of the Hawaii State Constitution?
Could you please repeat it for me?
That is commonly referred to as the due process provision of the state constitution.
Okay. No, I'm in Article 1, what I am aware of,
No,
Sir, my
sir.
question is whether you are familiar
No.
with the due process clause.
no.
Okay. Would you,
That's big and ambiguous. If you want to put that law in front of him and ask him to be surrendered, that would be another story.
Overruled.
now, sir, with respect to the due process provision, would you accept my representation that it also has a section concerning equal protection of the laws?
As I understand Article 1, is that English common law in Article 1 is put foremost. And it says we have the right to make laws in the state of Hawaii because of the people.
Are you objecting to his answer?
I'm objecting to Mr. Shida asking questions that is not in Mr. written testimony.
Judge, he made
Your,
reference.
your next question, please. He's objecting after an answer. I don't.
Okay. Now, sir, would you agree with me that all persons have the right to the equal protection of laws in Hawaii?
I would.
And that obviously includes yourself
Yes,
and your opinions that you testified to this morning.
I would.
And would you also agree with me that those same protections also apply to persons who do not share your beliefs?
I would.
And you are aware, are you not, that there are persons, Native Hawaiians specifically, who support the construction of the TMT telescope?
Yes,
And you would agree with me that your voice today is your voice, a single, your opinion,
yes,
and no different than the opinions of anyone else who do not share in your
no different.
belief.
No different.
Now, with respect to going back a little bit to our laws that we talked about, are you familiar with the 8 criteria under the Hawaii Administrative Rules that the hearing officer must consider in determining whether to recommend construction of the telescope?
I am aware of that.
And which of the 8 criteria do you believe that your testimony is relevant to this morning?
Well, in the criteria, it basically draws on the Constitution as she was sworn in to protect and defend the state constitution. Article 12, Section 7 gives me consideration, constitutional consideration, to protect my cultural practice and rights because it is written as a covenant.
Perhaps my question was not very clear. Which of the 8 criteria is your testimony relevant to?
Why don't you go through them and I will let you know.
Okay. Does it have anything to do with the public welfare?
Yes,
And would you, well, let me ask this question. Do you support astronomy?
I am a papakila hoku, which means I am an astronomer of my practice in the Hawaiian generational knowledge tradition. So I'm no different, except by culture, than the PhDs up there that do the Western disciplinary practice.
Is that a yes?
Restate the question again.
Do you support astronomy?
Yes, I do.
And your testimony earlier this morning, am I right in concluding that you do not support construction of the TMT telescope? Is that
That is correct.
And would you consider your position to be absolute?
Yes, because it does damage and harm to us as a people and as a race and as I mentioned, our purpose in life.
You mentioned race, but you did admit earlier that not all Native Hawaiians share your sentiment that the TMT should not be built, correct?
The thing about it, yes, of course, they have the right to say nay.
All right. Now, you are not a land use expert, are you?
No, I am not.
Okay. You are not, you have never testified in court concerning appropriate land use matters.
Yes, I have. The Eva Marina contested case hearing went to the state state Supreme Court, and I was my pro se attorney for that. And it was an option for me to jump in when they wanted to do the shrinkage of the Eva Marina because our family, Iwi Kupuna, was in the entrance channel. And I took the opportunity to show Deutsche Bank if they decided to go through, they would not prevail when it was time to go through the channel. And they pulled funding for the billion-dollar marina.
Is it your testimony that you are qualified as an expert in land use in that case?
I was given my rights under the PASH and decision under Article 12, Section 7 to advocate for my family burial sites, that I was recognized by the Oahu Island Burial Council to have lineal connection, but I didn't ask for lineal, I asked for cultural.
Is that a yes?
Restate the question.
Were you qualified as an expert witness in that case? In land use?
Define expert under the law.
His question is expert in land use. Did you understand the question?
No, I did not.
Could you rephrase?
Yes, an expert witness is a witness who is called by a party in a contested matter to aid.
We had stated earlier there was no, the name escapes me, expert witnesses
I've
recognized in this case at this time.
He's explaining his question, so I'm going to overrule the objection. Please continue with your explanation and then rephrase the question he did not answer. He did not understand.
Can I tell
Yes,
you?
Your Honor.
I was in the last News Commission and I was brought as an expert, but the D.R. Horton attorneys said I was an expert in cultural practice, and cultural practice overlaps with, under the Constitution, with land use. And so that's where my quandary comes in, because if it didn't, I wouldn't be here.
So let me just cut to the chase. The bottom line is you're not sure.
Based on my, because you asked the specific question, have I been called on land use
Actually, my question
as an expert?
my question was whether you were qualified as an expert in land use.
No.
Now, the bottom line in this case is you have indicated for your personal reasons that you do not support the building of the TMT telescope. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And if, however, authority is granted to proceed with the building of the TMT, do you believe that continuing a dialogue in order to mitigate any cultural impacts to Native Hawaiian people is important?
It's backwards. They never mitigated when I asked them 3 years ago, so why would they do it now when I'm up here? Because they never did it 3 years ago, and they never took me seriously. So based on their track record, I do not believe that will happen.
Could you repeat the question? I don't think he understood it.
Thank you.
Sir, my question is this. Assuming that the TMT is authorized to move forward, do you believe that continuing, or in your case, as you indicated, initiating a dialogue to mitigate cultural impacts is something that's important?
Yes.
Is that something that you would be willing to participate in?
To protect our cultural resources, yes.
Sir, I represent a client organization. It's a group of Native Hawaiians who support the building of the telescope, but only if done so in a culturally sensitive manner. Would you agree that participating in that discussion, your participation in that discussion with them would be helpful or fruitful?
Obviously, I did it 3 years ago, and the answer is yes.
I'm sorry, you did what 3 years ago?
I put to the parties that we're going to do the TMT telescope to please clue me in so I could, everything you're seeing and more could be transmitted for the good of our cultural resources.
And you're still willing to do that today, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Sir, it was nice meeting you. And
Same here.
Appreciate your answers to
Thank
the
you very
questions.
much.
Thank you, Your Honor. Nothing
Thank you,
further.
Mr. Ashina. Mr. Sinkin?
Good morning, Mr. Lee.
Good morning.
I'm Lanny Sinkin, representing the Temple of Lono. And I actually wanted to go back to a question you just answered about how you're not different than anyone else in your opinions.
No?
Do you know anyone else in Hawaii that knows the name of 1,000 Hawaiian stars?
No.
Or anyone else in Hawaii that knows the name of 3,000 Polynesian stars?
No.
Thank you. And you've been a practicing star priest for 30 years?
It goes back to when I was 4 years old, when my grandfather pulled me aside and started teaching me. So this year I'm going to be 59, so it's like 50-something.
50-something years.
Yeah.
And you testified that you did register a burial with the state of Hawaii
That is correct.
SHIP D, I guess it's called.
That is correct. It is in my written testimony.
And have you had a response of any kind from the burial council or from the state
Oh, no.
agency?
Let me tell you why not. It's not triggered until they find the EV that I said was there. Then by state Section 6E law, I can then put in for a lineal claim. What I'm telling them is it's not undetermined. So if a big bulldozer collapses into the cavern, if I didn't put my burial registry in, under Section 6E law, they would claim it's unidentified. Therefore, SHBD gets full control over burial treatment plan.
Right.
But under Section 6E, because I put the claim that is only activated upon finding the EV, it says it was identified, pre-identified, which we go through the Hawaii Island Burial Council. I am voideered in executive session. They will vote whether to accept my claim as a lineal descendant, and then I have equal say as the landowner, quote unquote, on disposition of burial treatment plan.
So let me be sure I understand this. So until they actually collapse it in and find the bones, you get no protection?
No, it's triggered by the finding of EV.
And you mentioned climate change and what's going on the planet. I wanted to look at a few indicators and see if they have meaning on Mauna Kea. Over on Mauna Loa, there are ice caves where there's ice that's been there for a very long time that's disappearing, and in some cases has already disappeared. The ocean itself is warming. And you talked about the cutting off of the flow of fresh water to the ocean as adding to the warming that's taking place, that's bleaching the coral.
That is correct.
And we now have the possibility of a large structure being placed on Mauna Kea that could change the patterns of the winds, and you related the winds to the currents.
That is correct.
I'm wondering if, looking at all of that, you've had a chance to analyze in your own mind what the impacts of building the 30-meter telescope might be on the overall environment.
It's cumulative, Mr. Sinkin, and it's cumulative this way, that our endemic trees, their leaves are like paws. And what do I mean by that is, as you know, the high surf, as we're experiencing right now in the wintertime, pushes sea mist and blown up the mountain.
I'm sorry, it pushes
the sea mist, the water,
mist.
sea mist from the churning of the waves.
Yes.
All of you get this white mist pushing up. From October all the way to April, as this ocean water with zooplankton and phytoplankton are pushed up the mountain, it condenses as it starts to draw together as it gets colder. And our endemic trees at the 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 foot level, this is part of the neck of the property, starts to condense the water and drip, 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 drip down. And so it's a microenvironment. And what happens is the sun comes up about 2, 3 o'clock, the water cycle starts evaporating, and then you see the clouds all of a sudden start forming, and then it rains, yeah? So this is what they call the watershed. As we take away each segment that makes us productive by putting cattle where the endemics were, we're killing ourselves. And that's part of Konahiki, Makahiki, and Kapu. So we need for reforestation of all of our mountains so that watershed can continue, which is a microclimate bringing rain from the mist. And the mist is so loaded with phytoplankton. You see this at Makaha. 2 months in October, November, no rain. The entire mountain is green because in October, it's cold and condenses the mist into dew. That dew feeds the plant directly, and they turn green as if it's been raining.
Okay, thank you. As part of the environmental impact assessment being done for this project, a company was hired to do a cultural impact assessment. You testified that you were never approached by BLNR, DLNR, the University of Hawaii, or the Office of Mauna Kea Management. Were you ever approached by the company that did the cultural impact assessment for the EIS?
No, Mr. Sinkin.
Would it be correct to say that this phenomenally complex and comprehensive body of knowledge that you have shared a tip of with us today is barely included in the EIS, if at all?
Not at all, Mr. Sinkin.
That is despite the fact that you offered your services in 2013.
In front of the Board of Land and Natural Resources with the parties from University of Hawaii that plan to do the EIS again. That is correct. They did not take up my offer. I gave them my card and nobody called back.
And Mr. Ishida was asking you about whether you'd be willing to participate in a dialogue with people who rejected your offering of help earlier. And you actually sort of said, what's the point the first time, and then said, okay, I would the second time. If they have gotten the permit and are preparing to build the TMT, what would be the point of having such a dialogue from your perspective?
Thank you for asking that question, because it denotes my knowledge. This is City Council for my cultural practice.
We're upside down here.
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, this is from the County of Honolulu. The dates of my Papakilo Hoku says right up here, honoring Papakilo Hoku, and they had this in evidence at the time. 3 separate. Over a period of 10 years, the date, again, the City Council honoring Kumukauoha Lee for his cultural practice and connection to the Kamehameha bloodline under rules of evidence, sunshine procedure. Okay, going back to 2004, and this was entered into evidence. And basically, they didn't want to know, because if they had it, it would have changed the CAT. It would have changed where we're at.
Let me interrupt for a second. You said change the CAT. What is
The
that?
cultural assessment that was going on.
Okay.
And it would change the final consideration, because then SHPD would have to mitigate. If I was in, it triggers a mitigation, which if you're not in the AIS, you have no rights under state law, because that's the document that's official, that's used by state and county parties to make their decision based on what's in the box. Because I was excluded with the voluminous knowledge that I'm sharing now, which I offered, they're not making decisions and even void-deering and, okay, let's go see the bones. They're not doing that, and they refuse to do that, so it's not changing. I was barred from the process of my due rights for due process rights when I volunteered, and I'm in the record. And then I contested the case in front of BLNR for the conditional use permit in 2013 with Hank Fergestrom on the record. And so my due process rights under Article 12, Section 7 were denied under administrative rules.
Thank you. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you,
Lee.
Mr. Singh.
Mr. Kanaile?
Aloha.
Aloha.
You know, my son talks about what is in the heavens is on the earth. So when you turn the sky to the earth, is that how you find the secret areas and placements of people who were born in certain houses here on this island where they should be and not be on every island, actually?
Can you be more specific in time? Because the way I understood your question, you're talking about modern, right now.
Right now.
Right now. The answer is no, because they're not going by the roadmap that was taught to me. So the answer is no, because there's no way they could know, unless their uhane noho or uhane mai, their family, were telling them, don't go here. Because based on what we know on the other side, don't go here. So in that case, it would be yes.
Okay. Thanks. You know, in my teaching of creation, you know, that the god Ka'ila'au formed and made the plumbing for Mauna Kea. The aquifer within, in the middle of the aquifer, there's all these holes that represent rivers and underground streams and different things like that. Is that correct?
I will answer it this way. Kiokua who I'm a servant of, who created everything, the uncreated, through its will and its dream and imagination, created us. And like in the Bible, created the angels, Gabriel, Raphael, Uriel, that were like gods to do his work. Who you are using the name is equal to the servants of Yahweh Jehovah, who created everything, which we call him Kiakua'io, who tasked who you're talking about to do his work. In that respect, yes.
Okay, right on. You know, according to the Pele story, yeah,
Yes.
is this the first time that we have been in this position of turning Earth into Mars?
No. It's happened something like 35 million years ago when the Earth was on a wobbly tilt and the entire Earth was a big snowball.
Concerning burials, have you heard the term hidden burials?
Yes.
Doesn't the rules of the state of Hawaii break those laws when they find inadvertible discoveries by destruction of our burial sites and sometimes bones?
Yes.
If these native Hawaiians who support the TMT knew what you knew, well, no, that's supposing, yeah, excuse me. Have you been to Kaho'olawe?
No. No.
No, okay. Are you familiar with the net that catches the bad spirits given by Tutu Spider?
I am familiar with the knowledge, but not the book.
No, okay.
I'll answer it this way. One of my teachers, Uncle Walter Kamana, taught me that woman's laki, which is never talked about. I was taught by Auntie Alice Holokai, whose brother went to Mexico. He was the paniolo that had 100 different ways of using laki. She could only retain 12 at age 86. This is back in the 70s. So I took her class. Boy, did she lambaste me. So what I'm trying to say is there is a wahine slaki that Uncle Walter, whose mother was kahuna from Niihau, when you play the slaki, the uhane come to listen. And if you're drying your nets out and they walk through the nets, you cannot use the net anymore. No fish will go in the net, okay? Because the aka shadow and the mana will retain on the nets. So you never play if the nets are drying. after you pick out all the limo and stuff. So there is another net, kuku, the spider net, okay? That net is very, very important to us, okay? Because it brings in the spider mist, which you can cover. From Ni'ihau, you can chant and cover the entire island of Kauai. And as I said earlier, the alohe have to fight within the spider mist. And if you can't, you die. So of what is inside the spider mist. So in our practice, what you just put on the table is very sacred. And I just gave enough so that you know, I know, as I said, of the practice.
That's what we use the ketchup.
Yeah.
My teacher met with you in the Kauai High. He had a little thing down there. And you also have another talent that even NASA cannot match. And that's predicting earthquakes.
Oh, yeah.
Could you
elaborate? That's tutupele. And this was back in the days Henry Winkler had this program that was on cable back in 1996, it's called Sightings. And they did a whole thing because using tutupele, which is the lunar and solar eclipse of Hina-ai, because she controls the wind through the rising of the moons. And this was what I was taught by my maternal grandfather about the Pele moon. And in using that, I was introduced to the computer and started to make connections. And it was my students that helped me because I never knew anything about computer. And I predicted 9 months in advance an actual earthquake that took place in Turkey in 1999, August 11th. It killed 28,000 people and was accurate to a day in Costa Rica. And those people were calling me up and crying. And it took me aback because my prediction for the lunar eclipse was 99%. And the school was being bombarded. And they did a newspaper, Star Bulletin did an article because one of the students in my class, I warned the exact date and time in Hilo when the earthquake would take place. He told his grandmother at 8:00 a.m. the earthquake was going to come in Hilo. She took down the china, nothing happened. 8:05, she put back the china, the earthquake came and destroyed her china. And so I know for a fact that if we could get a supercomputer, I could teach the supercomputer what to look at, and we would have a full-on running net, spooky, to help civil defense all over the world to save hundreds of thousands of lives because of Hawaiian proprietary knowledge that is real based on what is real and true, which they call empirical cause and effect.
Malo kaloko I mai kai.
Mahalo.
Thank you.
In view
What
of
has
the,
been hidden must be revealed.
Yes.
in view of the time, we'll take a 1-hour recess till 1 o'clock, please. Mr. Lee, please return at 1 o'clock. Thank you very much.
Contested case hearing for the 30-meter telescope project. A proceeding for the State of Hawaii, DLNR, Board of Land and Natural Resources.
Thank you for your patience. Mr. Lee, I'm going to remind you that the testimony you're about to give will continue under the oath you took earlier to tell
Yes.
the truth, okay?
Yes, I will.
All right, thank you very much. And Mr. Vicente, you're next.
Dwight Vicente. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
You stated earlier that about the Organic Act. Are you aware that the Organic Act was written, how would I put it now, as a product of the Northwest Ordinance of 1787?
No.
Are you aware that the Hawaiian Homes Commission Act is based on the Northwest Ordinance of?
No.
How about the State Admission Act
That it's based on what?
on the Northwest Ordinance?
No?
Do you know that the state of Hawaii is a creature of the Northwest Ordinance?
Not of what you're talking about, no.
Objection, Your Honor. Mr. Richards already said he doesn't have any knowledge of the Northwest Ordinance. Perhaps Mr. Vicente could set a platform or a foundation for him.
Those were foundational questions, and so therefore continued questions in this area would not be appropriate for this witness. But where are we going?
I want to see if he understands the 8 criteria that's in this case.
You can ask him that question.
Do you know that the 8 criteria to this case is based on the Northwest Ordinance of 1787?
No.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vicente. Mrs. Freitas?
Aloha.
Aloha.
Sydney Freitas, aloha.
Aloha.
Do you still have those pictures of Haleakala, the portals, I guess you called it?
Portals or uprights?
The uprights, yes.
It looks kind of blurry.
Oh, thank you. Can you mention about this uprights? And it's coming from Haleakala?
That is correct. Southeast slope.
Okay. By building a TMT, or if they ever should build a TMT, would it be a substantial adverse impact to the existing natural resources or culture resources that you have as a culture, customary, traditional practice practitioner for your lineage? Would it hinder that?
Yes, and can I tell you how?
Yes.
Okay. We Papakilohoku have our own way of using the horizon as a telescope. This is the big secret. At the 10-degree elevation, scientists and psychiatrists call it moon illusion. It's a fancy word for they don't know why this happens. And I'll tell you what happens. When you see the full moon rising, it's massive. Everybody has seen a full moon rises. But answer me this. When the full moon rises like this big monster, when it gets to the zenith, it's like a quarter. Why? Why? Did the sky change? Did your vision shrink? It happens every single day, empirical knowledge. Now let me tell you what we know, because guess what? We use, in the atmosphere, the reason why we have these telescopes on the 14,000 feet, they don't like the water that makes light jiggle.
Yes.
Yeah? But we, Papakilohoku, use the moisture in the air as a telescope. And only at the 10-degree horizon angle, I mentioned the Pleiades. The Pleiades on July 23rd, at the 10-degree angle at 3 a.m. in the morning, the Pleiades, when you see it above, looks like tiny, tiny little nothing. You take a full moon rising, and you take the rising of the Pleiades on this time, the Pleiades is 5 times bigger than the full moon. What does that mean? We can see the stars and the nebulas within the Pleiades. So when we talk in our Mokuauoha about the eye in the sky, and you've got the Hubble telescope showing you the eye in the sky, we already knew it was up there. In fact, in chant 11, the last child of Papa is mentioned. It's a planet. that wasn't discovered till 1929, we already knew it existed 1,000 years ago. Because of that effect, moon illusion is what they name it in the Western. But we knew where all the nebulas were, and we even saw planets that weren't discovered for 1,000 years. And even Phoebe of the Papale Saturn, which is Papa Nui. Let's get some terms out of the way. Mars is Maui. Jupiter is Lua, that married Papa, Mars and Jupiter, okay? And the Wahine Ali'i, which is the daughter of Papa Nui, is Venus. And so we go through this pantheon of stars, but this rising, we can actually see the ring around Saturn at the 10-degree azimuth as it's rising. So we knew there was a Papali, yeah? So when the Westerners came, they didn't bother with Captain Cook asking the Papakilohoku because we know everything and you can't add, because we got telescopes, but so do we. And we can see the sunspots by the Waihaka, a glass mirror, and what we do is we put a dye so we can look without burning out our eyeballs, prehistoric. We see it magnified in the shape of the lens of the round Papakilohoku stone with the dye 5 inches. We can look directly with our eyes without filtering out all the blinding light.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, by the way, I do classes on that mountain, how to do this.
Thank you. Polole. Also, by building this TMT, would it be detrimental to your family, knowing this is a lineage and a practice of yours, knowing you're the keeper as well?
Yes, and the reason why is the way I said, the view plane at the 10 degrees rising to the southeast, you know, at that height is going to block what we use as a cultural practice, because my mitigation is take it to outer space. Because A, you spend trillions on war, what's 4 billion to take it up there, you know?
Okay. Can we see D4? I think that map that you drew?
This one?
Yes.
Okay.
This is the access road.
That is correct.
I need to understand what part of the access road is this?
Okay, the TMT is up here. It's where my hand is.
I can't
so
see it.
The TMT goes this way up, and as you're going down, the access road is going on this.
Okay.
Okay. So you're driving up this way to get to the TMT.
Okay, where is that cave that you, well, if you don't mind, you mentioned a cave.
Yeah, there are several caves here, and there are several entrances where I do not want to show.
Okay.
Because of
thank
Kapu.
you. Knowing that they're gonna do some sort of construction on the road up there, wouldn't it fair to say that it would cause substantial adverse impact to the existing natural resources as well as the culture in the surrounding area?
The answer is yes. As I say, spills, oil spills and everything. I did the Papipi Road case to give you an example, to answer your question for foundation. Papipi Road is in Eva Beach, okay? Coseco Eva Inc. wanted to take the water directly from the road and build a concrete drain into the ocean where our limu beds are. And I took them to First Circuit Court, Judge Eden Hifu, AKA Bambi Weil, and Judge Hifu said, Mr. Lee, you know, what's this all about? I'm Holly. I know nothing about limu and your cultural practice because I use that for medicine to cure people. No charge. It's kiakua. So I said, okay, I'll give it to you in 2 sentences. Okay. Here's a clean glass. Here's fresh, sweet, clean water. Would you want to drink it? Yes. Here's motor oil. You want to drink it now? Neither does my cultural practice. Invertebrates, fishes, limu. I got it. Haseko Iva Inc. either have a retention pond to filter out all the heavy metals on Mr. Lee's cultural practice, or do a long-term scientific report on how heavy metal runoff vis-a-vis oil affects Mr. Lee's cultural practice, millions of dollars. They did the filtering system. That was judicial legislation that went throughout the entire state. Now everybody who's doing it has to have retention ponds. They don't have a retention pond.
Not for the TMT? They don't have one?
Nope. Nope. So now you get my point, how
Yes.
heavy metals dripping on that access road is going to directly affect my culture practice, because we have la'au up there that we use, and also limu, which I put in a copyright in 2010 of the limus that we grow up there in Lake Wai'au for healing.
Thank you. I have no more questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Freitas. Mr. Freitas?
Aloha oinala.
Aloha.
Mr. Lee. My first question to you is, you don't know me, do you?
I can't say that because my great-great-grandmother was a Freitas.
Oh. Okay, well, I wasn't referring to my last name. Anyway, we don't really know each other personally.
Personally, this is the first time we've
Thank you.
met.
I'm the grandson of, and I had permission to use my grandmother's name in these proceedings by my my mother's last living sister, one of her last living sisters. And I am the grandson of Ka'au Lahi Lahi Ke O Kolole. Could you explain to me as a genealogy just how that relates to a native Hawaiian as I am?
To answer you truthfully, I am not a genealogist, never was. But when Keokua asked me to do my genealogy, I had to, based on carrying my water for my family. But the word Keoho Kalole goes back in my research to Queen Liliuokalani's mother, who had 10 children, who is the mother of our Queen Liliuokalani and Kalakaua. And that, in honesty, is to the extent I can answer your question.
Thank you. On the proposed TMT site in June of 2015, myself as a native Hawaiian and others established a place for pule and offerings on that proposed access road of the TMT site. Would you agree that that necessity of our spirits moved us to establish that area?
I can answer it this way.
Yes.
That in our traditional cultural practices, that the Uhane Mea, our second piko, come to us and guide us, as you have just laid out. And that is how we do what we do. And so I cannot speak to the intention of your Mokuauhau piko, but if that's what they did to come to you, it is legitimate on my spiritual practice, my use, and my teaching. Absolutely true.
Thank you. You exhibit some pictures from Haleakala to Mauna Kea. I was curious to ask you, from Mauna Kea to Haleakala, the same reciprocal type of ceremony would be done from Mauna Kea to Haleakala?
That is correct.
Thank you. So being that...
May I add to
Yes.
answer it completely? Hank Fergustrom and myself see Hank's mountain, Mauna Kea. Mine, because of my mokuauahau, Hank loses breath on Haleakala. I lose breath going up Mauna Kea. So the mana, we wanted to send the Rainbow Bridge back and forth, but because when the day was to do it, there was some heva that took place, we okied that chord of thought. Yeah.
Thank you. Could you summarize again in how the building of the TMT will obstruct and interfere with your spiritual practices?
Through our second Pico Mokuauoha and through the Mea Noho, our family coming to instruct us, because what we haven't put is at 2015, Hank and I and my student did a kapu practice up there. It's very powerful as well. We used the snows to make the ava ceremony that were up there. And we did the 3 levels to open the portal for the Pico. Again, we don't advertise. You know, it's not proper to let people know when and where and how. It's kapu. It's sacred. It's forbidden. Outside of the people who've been taught what is the right way. Because do it wrong, you can lose your life, yeah, by bringing disrespect to the area. So, in that process, the view plane, makahiki, konahiki, and kapu make up our culture through the 3 picos. And when we're called to witness that connection to Keakua, that's sacred. The living mountain with his living creation, which are the vessels of the memory he gave us to connect with the divine, to the living mountain on the living planet. Now you oki or cut the cord of protection that is afforded to the entire world, as I said, the electromagnetic field and the living mountain that gives us part of this long-range purpose to wake up, Iala, our minds that are lifted by Pico 1, to do the mission that all our generations in each living generation must carry forth on the shoulders of our iwi kupuna that lift us up like haloa. The leaves lift up to the Holy Spirit that created the life. And that's what we are supposed to do, is to lift up the cord to the Creator, the uncreated Creator that created our mokuauahau, both here on earth and our sky ancestry that He created too. And now you're okiing our life force and our memory. Your greatest treasure are your memory. Anybody who's taking care of Alzheimer's patient, that's not Papa anymore, but we reverence the soul of Papa as we reverence the soul of Mother Earth, who the Creator created and put these protective mechanisms in to protect all of us from turning into Mars.
Mahalo. I stand here as a native Hawaiian in protection of these ahus that are built on that particular site of TMT. In your understanding of Article 12, Section 7, do you believe that these sites should be protected until such time?
It states, Article 12, Section 7, we will not overregulate the Hawaiian cultural practice for the health of the Hawaiian people. We're dying. We're dying because we're cut off from the source, the memory. Because when we get together, the cords shoot up. The more cords, the more power is put to the place, because that's what we are, to light up. That's why the ascendancy comes here in the attitude, ha'a ha'a, in humility. not because you claim something that you never worked for, because we never worked for this. God gave it to us. The creator of all gave it as the mission to protect the life of the world and the planet. Take that away, you blow out our candle. And we see that happen with the diabetes, the strokes, the huge weight gain, because we're being cut off from God's mission to us in a purposeful life. And if we can't do it in this generation, we start choking it off in the next. And the purpose of this TMT is to bring the mission out, to ascend the people here, so the candle comes back here and the purposeful life can continue. Because it is so juicy, you never want to get fat. You never want to get, because it brings you life doing what you're meant to do.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I had another question, but I think you already answered it. In criteria 8, are you familiar with criteria 8 of the proposed, 8 criteria of for this proposed development of TMT?
No, I'm not.
Okay. Excuse me.
I don't have the list. Just being honest. Oh, that is it. I don't see 8. Yes, I do have it.
So when you say the health, in criteria 8, it mentions health, safety, and welfare. Does that pertain to Native Hawaiian spiritual and religious cultural rights?
Not under the proposed plan for TMT, based on my experience and knowledge.
So they would never, you agree that this criteria 8 would not meet its criteria?
In my experience and knowledge, based on what injury it would do to myself and my family, I have always advocated the best mitigation is to take it into outer space and take down all the other telescopes.
Mahalo. I know, do you have an understanding of the lands of the Mahele in 1848?
I am aware of them, yes, I do.
Okay, my question is, this contested case hearing is supposed to be related to land use. Isn't the modern designation of land determined by the Mahele of 1848?
To my knowledge, yes.
Thank you. Is it your understanding that that Kamehameha III meant the Mahele to protect the lands for Native Hawaiians?
Yes.
Thank you. How does this relate to Mauna Kea?
It relates because the way Kamehameha III said it, under Bouvier, the legal dictionary, the in your interest would be forever. And what Kamehameha said in why he was doing the Mahele, because other chiefs were giving away lands and it was improper. He has the mo'i, he justifies the 2.4 million acres by saying this: I got it from my father who conquered everything in the feudal system of all the islands except for Kauai. And under the land given to me as absolute ruler, nobody has forced me, not the chiefs or my people, to give up my status of absolute monarch, to distribute the lands that were given to me by my father under the inure, which is the interest that he held and maintained, that I, from my lap, pass it to my people, which were broken up into 3 sections, the Ali'i, the Konehiki, and the Maka'ainana. And with that, he put a bundle of rights that were attached to it, because what he did for his people is he raised them up as the lords of their own land outside of taxes and tariffs and being able to put liens on the property to say, you may take away my life, but you can't take away all my people's lives. And the interest is in forever with my people. It's allodial. And the fraud was that basically during the overthrow, Dole went in August 1902 and 1903 and scratched out allodial and put freehold fee simple of all the royal lands and the Kanaka lands, including ours, and retitled them, which is a fraud, and there's no statute of limit of fraud, that they were free simple freehold, because they were well aware of Bouvier, not Black's dictionary, legal dictionary, but Bouvier, 4th edition, 1856. And what that states is forever in equal tenant rights, the equal tenants must come back and reclaim their land after Tutu's passed. The great tragedy was no one taught after the first Mahele royal patent holders did not teach their children, nor did the school systems, what Queen Emma, Queen Kalama knew, that after the death of family, you must go back and reclaim the land that was up there. Had it been in our school system and families knew the portfolio and the distinction between freehold and fee simple and allodial, we wouldn't be sitting in this room now.
Thank you. So that document of 1906, that is evidence still yet that exists?
What document are you referring to?
The one you said that Dole went and scratched out.
Oh, 1902, 1903. It is in the Bureau of Conveyances. Mikahela Kikau Onohe's 42,000 acres of allodial land forever was scratched out to freehold fee simple, but you can find the truth. There's a different section that's under Kamehameha III when they all put it in 1847, 1848, 1849, where they haven't scratched it out because the foundation is based on that document. So they can fool around on top, but they cannot change the metes and bounds, and they can scratch off the distinction there. But the Kamehameha one, I have it certified under allodial right, under allodial title, 1847 from Kamehameha III.
Mahalo. I thank you for all you do for our Native Hawaiians.
Mahalo.
I have so much other questions to ask you, but I don't think it's be relevant for this case. Thank you.
Mahalo.
Thank you, Mr. Freitas. Mr. Louis Kwan?
Hello, Mr. Lee.
Aloha.
My name is Tim Louis Kwan. I am one of the attorneys for the University of Hawaii. I have a few questions regarding your exhibits. Can you place back on the screen Exhibit D4?
Oh, this one?
Yeah, that's the one. Thank you.
Yeah.
Did you prepare the drawing that's represented on Exhibit D4?
Which drawing are you referring to? Top, middle, or
Well,
bottom?
all of the handwritten notes. Is
The
that
handwritten
right?
notes are mine.
Okay. When did you make these notes?
At home.
When?
Some of them were at home as it was put in August of last year. And then a refinement was put in at Hank's house when I last visited him, which I cannot recall the exact date.
Was it within the last 30 days?
No way. This was placed in last year, so it probably was last year. I think this was placed in evidence somewhere around October of last year, so not within the 30 days. Your own records department should have the date of the filing.
Okay, so you prepared the final notes for this just prior to the date it was filed. Is that correct?
Partially. What I did prepare is where the two moons are,
Yes.
because of objections from your group saying, and I can only put this way, that there really no cultural practice up there, and because of ex-Governor Abercrombie made the comment, they made it up 10 minutes ago, I put this in to answer the cry that there was no such thing as cultural practice on this end of the mountain.
Okay, thank you. So how about the notes you have on the top left-hand corner?
This one or this one? This one?
Yeah, there. That's, I
Right.
assume that's an inset? Is that correct?
What's an incept?
An inset is a part of a map that's not represented as part of the map, but it comes from an area.
This
within
is
the map.
from this page, which says on the bottom, Figure 8, location finding spot of Mauna Kea Summit Access Road, was done for the AIS 2009, and that's their drawing. All I did was put an arrow there.
Okay, that's good. So there's something in that inset area that's marked, you've handwritten burial places, is that correct?
Correct.
And that inset area, can you move the drawing further up?
Further up.
No, further, the other way.
Okay.
So I assume that inset area comes from that corner on the very bottom, is that correct?
This where?
Move to the right a little bit.
This way?
No, too far over. There's a small corner that says, it says inset area. It's a darkened thing that looks like right there, correct?
Right there?
Correct.
Yeah, that is again from the AIS. I didn't draw it.
I understand, I understand. So really the inset area that you drew the burial places in is accurately represented in that area of the map. Is that correct?
Right, as I said, on the access road,
Okay,
we're
thanks.
not talking about the top.
Right, right. So this is all the access, this is access road.
Which is connected as a complex. Without the road, you cannot bring in your stuff to
that's
build
fine.
it.
That's fine, thank you. So I'm going to show you the base map that you actually,
Is it a different map you're talking about?
no, it's the map you said you took off of the AIS for the Mauna Kea Access Road.
Can you show it to me so I
Sure.
can be on the same piece of music? Oh, okay, I see that one.
Mr. Ferguson, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I said I would like to see that map also. That is my witness he's addressing. I'd like to know what he's showing
Do
my
you
witness.
have a copy for Mr. Ferguson?
That's the only copy we have from our files. It comes from Exhibit A56, a hard copy of which was provided Mr. Ferguson months ago. It's from page
A56.
A56. You can find it on page 5.17.
I'll allow you for a moment.
So, Mr. Lee, if you can push the drawing up a little bit. Yeah, so you can see the page number on the bottom. Is that correct?
Correct.
So is that the map you use as your base map to make your drawing?
This part is what I have on this, but this writing is, as you can see here, it says 2021, and here it says 5-17.
Okay, but
So-
essentially it's the same map. You can compare the map itself, correct?
Yeah, except for this on the bottom.
Right. And it actually is figure 5.8, right?
That is, okay, that says 5.8 there, but this says figure 8 here. So it's
Okay.
not the same, because you can't get a 5.8 and an 8 to be 8.
So all of the sites, all the features that represented on this exhibit, you can put it back, D4,
I'm looking.
are all below the science reserve. Is that correct?
It's below the TMT. It's the access
It's not
road.
in the area of the TMT. Is it in the area of TMT?
It's needed for TMT because without it,
The
you can't
question
get the
is,
big stuff.
That's not my question.
Objection, Your Honor. Argumentative.
Overruled.
Do you want to continue the question? Because there's a bantering going back and forth.
No, so my question was, it's not in the area of the TMT, is that correct?
No, the TMT is at the top, and this is processed part of going up.
In fact, this is below the Mauna Kea Science Reserve, isn't that right?
Correct, but they needed this because of the big materials that are
That's
going to go
fine.
into
It's,
that.
I'm just asking you whether or not.
And I'm
it's
answering
below.
you to the best of my ability.
That's fine,
Mr.
thank you.
Lee, it would be helpful if you would simply answer the question. Mr. Fergestrom will have an opportunity to redirect, so
Thank
if you
you.
wish to expand, I'm sure he'll be able to ask you the
Thank
proper
you.
questions.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
So Exhibit D4, I think you can put D4 back on again.
This one.
Yeah, so that one, so wasn't this attached to your burial registration form
That is
you
correct.
submitted?
That is correct.
And wasn't your burial registration form, we don't have a copy here, but you said you submitted it in
That is correct.
August 2nd,
Last year.
2016?
Yeah, last year.
Okay, can you wait until I finish asking the question before answering? I think it's hard for the court reporter to record or transcribe your testimony. So wasn't the, and I'm not asking you for the location of those burial places you identified in that form, but didn't you actually identify the location by GPS coordinates?
In this map?
Not on this map, but in the burial registration form you filed with SHPD in August.
For this access road going up?
Well, I refer you to Exhibit D3, which is a burial registration form,
Right,
which is one of your exhibits.
right.
Is that correct?
Now, Mike, how would you know that? Because it's under seal.
I'm asking you a question.
And
The question
I'll answer that. I did not use GPS. What I did use was the site markings that are in this document because it was done by the AIS. So I used their numbers.
I see.
I didn't put GPS. I put their numbers to show on their map to make it clear and not confused what I was talking about.
Okay, so those small numbers you're talking about are the numbers on this map, is that correct?
Yes, these site numbers here, here is what I did to articulate where the underground sites were.
So again, do you know what those numbering is for?
The way they put it out and what they were, they have a list which is in my burial claim form, which I didn't put
Lee,
here.
I just asked you if you know what the
Yes, I
numbering is
do.
for. What is the numbering for?
For what?
That's on the map.
For this?
The small numbers on the map, the base map.
According to their scale, it said at what time, in what year, that they found X, which was like a pile or grouping of rocks, or placement of surface visual
Well, let me
occupy on the
lead you.
date.
Obviously, you don't understand the question.
No, I don't.
So the question is, isn't the numbering referred to on the base map a reference to find spots
Yes.
along the road?
Yes,
Is that correct?
that is correct.
Okay. So all of the burial sites you identified in the burial form you submitted in August were along this road.
Because I have to answer your question. There are underground caves that the sites that were taken for the identified marker are surface. What I identified in annotation is subsurface burials because there are two caves like the nostrils of your nose that is on the TMT site and is picked up as it goes down because water comes through that.
But we don't have a map here showing those nostrils or otherwise showing these caves to the TMT
Yes, you do.
site.
Right over here takes it up to the, and the reason why is because we could not get a hold of the AIS because I wanted to use their marking to make it less confusing. So we could not get a hold of the original top site. We made an honest effort to get the top on the mountain, but we wanted to make it clear. But to make it clear, my family is buried here.
Okay, along this road.
Along this road.
Right. So again, my question to you back previously was, this map does not show the TMT site.
That is correct.
No further questions. Thank you.
Mr. Shinyama? Mr. Fergustrom, would you care to redirect?
Yes. Yes. This should go pretty fast, Michael. Thank you for tolerating them. I just wanted, I wanted to just finite some thought. The picture we had about the birthing stone on Halekala, is it true to your knowledge that we had never been there before?
Never had been there before.
Is it also true that that day that we were up there, we weren't even looking for that? We were actually tracking, you were demonstrating how to use the eke, the Hawaiian style way of looking at stars,
The Waihaka.
to track the transit of Venus. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And then when we were there, you received a call from your ancestors that says they wanted to know if we could hear well enough, and if we do, follow them. Is that correct?
This way to make it correct. My ancestor said, I want to show you your great-great-great-great-grandfather Kahikili's birth site. That's the exact words, and we're going to take you.
Thank you. And so prior to that, prior to going there, we didn't even know what it is we were looking for. So the identification of the stone palua, that was new to you also.
That was a complete surprise.
Thank you. So Michael, they had spoken many times about the 8 criteria, and I was a little not so sure if you were quite understanding what they're saying. So, and I wanted us to go over them really quickly so we know exactly what your answer was on each of the 8 criteria, if you would bear with me. Under the 8 criteria, it says the proposed land use is consistent with the purpose of the conservation district. Do you agree with that?
No.
Under number 2, the proposed land use is consistent with the objectives of the subzone of the land on which the use will occur. Do you agree with that?
No, Crown lands.
You need to read a little bit slower so she can keep up
Excuse
with
me,
you.
yes. Number 3, the proposed land use complies with provisions and guidelines contained in Chapter 205A HRS entitled Coastal Zone Management where applicable.
No, it's not coastal, it's Crown lands, Mauka.
Under number 4, the proposed land use will not cause substantial adverse impact to existing natural resources within the surrounding area, community, or region. Do you agree with that?
No, there are a lot up there we use for medicine that will be wiped out.
Thank you. Under number 5, it says the proposed land use, including buildings, structures, and facilities, shall be compatible with the locality and surrounding areas appropriate to the physical conditions and capabilities of the specific parcel or parcels. Do you agree with that?
No, the view plane will be wiped out in my Papakulo Hoku moon illusion.
Thank you. Under number 6, it says the existing physical and environmental aspects of the land, such as natural beauty and open space characteristics, will be preserved or improved upon, whichever is applicable. Do you agree with that?
No, the rising stars will not be seen 5 times bigger than they normally are when this comes up.
Thank you. Under number 7, the subdivision of land will not be utilized to increase the intensity of land uses in the conservation district.
I
Do you agree
disagree.
with that?
I disagree. They can go in outer space.
Okay, and the last of the 8 criteria, the proposed land use will not be materially detrimental to the public health, safety, or welfare. Do you agree with that?
I disagree because it intentionally wounds my family's historical presence that is consistent, and this is cumulative injury.
Michael, you've been a great witness. Thank you very much. I have no further questions, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. You're excused.
Mahalo.
Mr. Louis Kwan?
Your Honor, I wanted to make an objection for the record on the photographic exhibits that are used by this witness. Again, we were not provided in advance. They were not listed. They're not referenced. They're not filed. And weren't sent to us prior to this time. So any of the drawings or the photographic exhibits that were used, we would like to lodge an objection.
Okay. Mr. Fergerstrom?
The drawing that Mr. Louis Kwan talked about the most is already in evidence. The photographs were just to give you an idea of what we're looking at. If you think they're not something that would be good to have in evidence, we don't have to put it in evidence. But because of the interest shown after clearing with Michael, we will submit it in evidence if it's not going to cause anybody having a cow or anything.
Mr. Louis Kwan?
I wasn't referring to D3 or D4. I was referring to
the pictures.
The pictures, and there were a couple other drawings, handwritten drawings that the witness already had too. I think there are 2 or 3 others.
So it sounds like Mr. Fergerstrom doesn't have to introduce them, but use them for demonstrative purposes with this witness. Is that okay?
No problem with demonstratives. Thank you.
Okay. So we're not going to receive them, Mr. Fergerstrom. Thank you. Okay. So your next witness, Mr. Fergerstrom?